This is the Vermont Legislative Task Force on Revitalizing Vermont's Dairy Industry. Today is Tuesday, August 24th. We're in room 11 of the State House, and this is the beginning of the fourth meeting of the task force. Good morning to our task force members on Zoom, and this is our first meeting in person. I think if we could start with introductions, that would be good. Give John a minute to sit down and maybe start on the other side of the room with Jack. Oh, Michael, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Good morning, Representative Michael Marcotte from Coventry. I represent Coventry, Irisburg, Newport City, Newport Town, and Troy, and I'm chair of House Commerce and Economic Development.
Morning, my name is Jackie Folsom, retired dairy farmer from Cabot, Vermont, and legislative director for Vermont Farm Bureau and the Vermont Fairs and Field Days.
And I'm Bobby Starr, Senator from Essex, Orleans County, and I chair the Senate Ag Committee as well as sit on the Senate Appropriations Committee.
I'm Dan Smith. I'm an attorney in Montpelier, practiced in the field of milk market regulation for a number of years and was on the legislative council here in the State House longer ago than I care to admit.
I'm Senator Randy Brock from Franklin County and also represent Alberg in Grand Isle County, and I'm the Senate Minority Leader.
And I'm John Roberts
You guys have to share.
from the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition, former dairy farmer and now executive director. Thank you.
John?
Good morning. I'm John O'Brien. I represent Royalton and my hometown of Tunbridge, and I serve on House Ag and Forestry. I'm interested, what are you guys looking at as far as the other tiles of the other members or witnesses who are remote?
So we're looking at two screens on either side of, I confess I can't remember the governor, in the big painting on the back wall of room 11. There's two screens on either side. Heather.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, my camera is not working today, but I'm Heather Darby. I'm with the University of Vermont Extension. I'm an agronomist there and have been working with the dairy community for the last 18 years in that position. Thank you.
Mary. Continue with introductions of who are additional people on screen. So Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary White. I am a small dairy farmer over in Orange County. We farm in Corinth, and excited to talk to you all today.
Joanna.
Good morning. I'm Joanna Lidback. I'm also a small dairy farmer, but located here in the Northeast Kingdom in Westmore, Vermont. And I'm also excited to talk with you today.
And Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Manning, and I farm in Swanton with my family.
So this is the fourth meeting of the task force. Just to put today's meeting in a bit of context, we started in May, heard from the Department of Financial Regulation with a recounting of the report that prompted the convening of this task force, and also from the Agency of Agriculture. So the agency gave us the beginning of a picture of the market. At our next meeting, we heard from the cooperative leadership, big picture in terms of how they operate, where farms are located, and how the milk produced in Vermont flows. Our last meeting, we heard from the businesses that are operating in the state, dairy processing and manufacturing businesses. And so today the meeting with the farmer witnesses is primarily to fill out the picture of the operating dairy industry in the state. As the agenda indicates, we're hearing from representatives of three sort of loosely defined categories: that track the regulatory structure at the point, small farm operators, medium farm operators, and large farm operators. And we're starting with the smaller operators. We, as we have with all the witnesses, sent out a series of questions that were intended to prompt the witnesses to think about what to say, but we're certainly hoping to hear whatever perspective you bring and thoughts and concerns. Obviously, the hot topic of the day is Horizon's announcement of the termination of contracts. So we have scheduled for our next meeting, September 13th. Is that right, Linda? I believe that our next meeting is to discuss the organic segment of the industry. Any thoughts that you might have, obviously we would welcome, but we do have a meeting devoted to that particular topic. So we obviously have a full agenda. Each witness has 20 minutes, and we hope we will do our best on our end. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions from the members of the task force. Our only requirement here is you're supposed to stay somewhere in this range of the microphone so that the witnesses can hear. So unless any other introductory thoughts, we are starting with Joanna. Pleased to
Okay.
hear. Good.
Ready? Okay, thank you. I did prepare some remarks that I'm just going to read from, so I hope you don't mind. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to speak before you today. My name, as you know, is Joanna Lidback, and my husband Adam and I own and operate the farm at Wheeler Mountain. I've submitted answers to the questions that were sent ahead of time, and hopefully they'll be distributed to you, so you'll have them to review. And certainly if you have questions that arise outside this allotted time, I'm always happy to answer, happy to help. We have a relatively small certified 80 cow dairy. We graze our cattle in the temperate months and have a tie stall barn where we milk. We raise all our own replacement heifers, and we also have a few extra steers around for local beef sales. We cover over 250 acres of tillable land. Much of it is in wrapped round bales, but also chopped silage and dry hay. And new this year is silage corn for us. I also have experience in the dairy industry as a service provider, having started my career as a loan officer in the farm credit system. And now I also have a small consulting business working directly with 10 farms, 7 of which are in Vermont. I'm also the CFO for Adirondack Farms, which is a larger dairy farm located in New York, just over the border. I obtained my MBA in 2006, and I'm also a certified agricultural consultant. We have several compounding issues hitting us here in the dairy industry right now. Of course, no one could have predicted the pandemic last year, but it certainly highlighted some of the fragilities in the supply chain from farm to grocery store shelf here in Vermont and across the country. And yet, despite that, there remains only 2 major ways to sell conventional milk from farms here in Vermont, and 4 organic companies, soon to be 3. This lack of competition is not only terrible for prices, but it limits the choices we as producers have, not only to continue in the industry, but also to exit, never mind getting new entrants in. Both conventional cooperatives here have installed base production programs that limit growth that used to be key to getting through low milk price cycles, especially for farms with significant overhead costs and debt. These production restrictions did start just prior to the pandemic in January 2020, but were swiftly ramped up in response to the supply chain issues that occurred because of the pandemic measures taken. Producers had to cut production or face stiff fees. We've been lucky compared to some of my dairy farming cohorts. Our base here at the farm at Wheeler Mountain was substantial because we had already adjusted downward, given that we have 3 young kids that were home with us, and at the time had no employees, and I was working full-time for Yankee Farm Credit. Now that we're through the lockdowns and are back to a relatively normal base, quote unquote, which again is very new for us here in the Northeast, We can produce up to 2 million pounds of milk in a year without any extra charge via my cooperative. We're on track to match our previous high this year of 1.4 million pounds, just to give you some scope. We also know that our co-ops have had their own challenges on the manufacturing end with a lack of labor availability, sounds familiar, and ultimately have not been able to make as much finished product, thus having to accept lower values for spot loads of milk, which in turn puts downward pressure on prices received at the farm gate. They've even had to dump some milk this summer when there was a problem at one of the plants and there was no other option to fall back on. Despite all this, we know that dairy consumption is at an all-time high. Sure, it shifted a bit from product to product last year, but it went up from 591 pounds per capita in the US alone in 2000 to 653 pounds in 2019. Even fluid milk was up last year. And yet we continue to lose dairy farms at an alarming rate here in Vermont, as you well know. This year, my husband and I have been bombarded by landowners, some new to the area, who want us to cut their hay meadows. Previously, they had been done by other farmers who have either stopped farming or have acquired rented land closer to their own farms. For us, it's not the most lucrative option, despite what they think, and it takes us away from our own lands. But if we don't cut these fields, who will? As an advisory member on the Orleans County Natural Resource and Conservation District, I know that a scrub forest that grows up in place of an abandoned dairy farming field is not just poor curb appeal, but it's also not great for water quality either. As I mentioned to some of my clients that I'd be testifying here today, I was reminded of a conversation my husband and I had early on in our farming journey together. He asked me to make sure I would pick bulls in our breeding program that had positive numbers in their proofs. His comment was, "It's only you and I running this farm, and we need as much working for us and with us, not against us." I think that can be applied to how Vermont approaches working with our Vermont dairy farmers and farms. There are no silver bullets, there's no magic wand. We can't all convert to organic. We can't all have our own farm stands or value-added product, but we can work together. Whether that's a back to basics, to support and invest in a thriving dairy industry, we need a multifaceted approach. Whether that's a back to basics business planning to help better understand financial results, resourceful advisors helping to advocate for farmers and comply with the RAPs. We personally have had a great experience with our advisor up here in our NRCD district, but I understand it's not always the case. Promoting the building or reopening of processing facilities to encourage end product manufacturing and innovation that has scalability. We need it all. To support and invest in a thriving dairy industry is to support and invest in a thriving Vermont. We want to see more dairy in Vermont, not less. Those are my prepared comments. If you have any questions for me, I can start answering the questions that I also prepared ahead of time as well. I wonder if there's anything that's burning that sticks out to you.
Any questions from task force members? Jack.
Thank you. Joanna, I was not able to see your answer. So could you give us a little bit of information regarding the risk management programs that you might be involved in? Thank you.
Oh, sure. Perfect. Yep. So certainly there are a lot more options for risk management programs than when I first started in this industry almost 20 years ago. I'm aging myself, I know. The most important factor in an effective risk management program starts with knowing your cost of production and how you can affect your break-even milk price. It starts with the business itself and understanding things like capacity, how to maximize gross revenue, and where you can be more efficient and productive. Building cash reserve is great if you can, and then you can ride out the price cycles and maximize profit. However, that's not always possible. In that case, you need to manage a net margin that makes sense for cash flow. And if you can work with some of the programs that are available, that helps. We actually were the first dairy in the state of Vermont to try the LGM dairy program. That's the livestock gross margin dairy program. It's one of the first crop insurance programs specifically available for dairy. We've also tried the Dairy Revenue Protection Program. LGM Dairy is still available, and DRP as well. The Dairy Revenue Protection Program is called DRP. There's a lot of acronyms, so trying to spell everything out. These programs are okay, but you have to remember that they're a type of insurance and you really don't want them to pay out. So most of the time they're an added expense, especially if you don't know what you're doing, they can add up. We've paid more into those programs than we got out of it, so we've stopped using them. For us and for our business model, the Dairy Margin Coverage Program through USDA, otherwise known as the DMC program, makes the most sense. I know that there are some farms who have had success with the DRP program, but they tend to have a little more cash flow at their disposal to work with.
Thank you.
Yep. We do kind of want to adjust. You asked about cost of production versus milk price, and I can share that with you. So first of all, I would caution you to just know that when you ask what your cost of production is to a dairy farmer, it could mean a couple different things. It's not necessarily a universal term, but generally cost of production doesn't include principal payments or a return to owner management. You might want to know, folks, break-even milk price. The break-even milk price will cover principal payments and the family living expenses like groceries for the household. So our break-even milk price has varied between $17.50 and $20 over the past 5 years. That includes my off-farm income. I sort of get a credit for off-farm income. We bought our farm in 2017 at fair market value. And certainly without my off-farm income, we wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage, even though it was a beginning farmer loan program through the Farm Service Agency and Yankee Farm Credit. We need it all. That's our diversification strategy. As far as milk price goes, of course, that's very variable. We hit a low over the past 5 years of $13.84 in June of last year, and a high of $21.82 in November of 2019. Prior to that, we had a sustained period of relatively low milk prices. Generally, we talk about a 3-year price cycle in the dairy industry. And while we still saw that between 2016 and 2019, or technically 2018, it was we didn't see as high of the peaks, or technically as low of the valleys as we normally would, or I shouldn't say normally, as we had prior to. It was much more sustained at a lower price, less volatility, but not as much as high a price. I see Heather has a question.
Oh, look at that.
My question is, you mentioned working together, which I agree is really important. And I guess what my question would be is, where do you think we could improve? Do you have ideas about where we could work together better? One of the things I saw in your answers was about, just these challenges of meeting all the requirements that are put on to dairy farms. So I guess my question is, how can we work together better?
I think it's a great question, and I thank you for that, Heather. I actually think that we have quite a number of organizations and groups here in Vermont, but they tend to be a little bit fragmented, and it's not always clear, at least from I would say probably I'd still be considered a flatlander, relatively new to Vermont. It's not clear who to go to for what and where. Certainly, when you have somebody who comes and meets you halfway and can kind of show you the way, like I mentioned, our soil conservationist here up in the Northeast Kingdom has been awesome to kind of pave the way for us. That's helpful. But I think we've got several different groups who seem to have similar goals, and I wonder if we couldn't all figure a way to get to work together.
Great.
Representative O'Brien, do you have a question?
Thank you, Joanna. Sort of a follow-up to Heather's was, maybe I missed it. Who do you ship to? And you have a farm in New York State too, you said?
My apologies. Yes, I ship to Agrimark.
Okay.
My personal farm here, we ship to Agrimark.
And in New York
And
too?
I am employed as CFO for Adirondack Farms. They also ship to Agrimark, and they have 2 sites that ship to DFA as well. So I get to see
Okay.
sort of the inside look of both co-ops.
That's what I was interested in with your unique perspective there. Is there any difference you see in how your farm here in Vermont and the farms in New York that you know a lot about, how they work with state government and the agencies of agriculture? Do you see anything in New York or Vermont where you're like, wow, they really have it right, or this is a big problem?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think that I think I see it a little bit more within Vermont, from county to county, so from my experience, like I keep saying, we've had a wonderful experience with the help of our soil conservationists and some of our advisors here in the Northeast Kingdom to help navigate the needs. So for example, we're a certified small farm. We have a nutrient management plan. That's pretty unique in the country to be so small. And technically we're a CAFO, right? We know what's going into our cows, what's coming out of them, and where it's going on the fields, and then what's coming off the fields. We get all these wonderful soil samples and water quality samples. And I'm a data person, and I love all that information. It's not the same in other parts of the country. I think that's a big strength that we have here in Vermont. And I'm hoping that it helps to put aside the myth that CAFOs are bad, because they're really, in my opinion, they're not. It's just a term to, anyway. But I think that my experience in the Northeast Kingdom, where it's been one of collaboration between the state agencies and the NRCD and NRCS and even FSA, is not the same everywhere, especially when I've talked to some of my clients in other parts of the state. So I guess that's where, I was thinking about what should I talk about today. I've been thinking about it for weeks now, actually. And it dawned on me, my husband's comment about having, trying to get everybody sort of rowing in the same direction, everything sort of working with us and for us and not against us, not adversarial. And I know it's tough to find people, especially to find people to take on roles of inspectors or that sort of thing, especially with farming experience, but they, somehow, I think you can train, somebody to be, to work with farmers and not necessarily be adversarial, especially if they see something that they don't quite understand, that maybe doesn't look right, but there's a reason for, kind of thing. So I don't know if that answered your question, but one other thought I might encourage the committee. I know these other 2 small producers who are going to speak after me, but we all ship to Agrimark. And I think that you might find the testimony of a small farmer that ships to DFA to be interesting and probably a lot different from us. I'm pretty satisfied at the moment for my small farm, and the rules that have been set up and stuck to for our base production program. At least we have that going for us in Agrimark. That exemption amount, that 2 million is pretty, for my farm individually has been generous. It allows room for growth. I know it's been restrictive for others in some ways. But Heather, you have another question?
Yes, first, your last comment, Joanna, I have heard that from 2 other farms, one that used to ship to DFA and now is with Agrimark, and very happy with Agrimark, and a different story when they were with DFA. So thanks for bringing that up. I guess my last question would really be with, various state mandates, things that maybe the legislature might have some control over influencing or modifying. Is there anything you can think of that would be an easy modification, or would seem easy on your end, that could help alleviate some of the pressures that the dairy community is under? I can't, I don't know all the sort of fees, charges, right? Whatever it might be. Is there anything you're like, oh, why are they doing this? And don't go on.
Well, I didn't always feel great about having to go through the certification process to be a certified small farm. I mean, now that I'm through it, I can look back and say, okay, that was okay. It didn't kill us. We're still here and we've got all this good information. But I think part of that was having that person to guide us through. So for small farmers, they set up a class at Craftsbury College around here to go through the software to set up the nutrient management plan. And at the time, that was a time when we had no employees, and my father-in-law, who was elderly, was here, and he tried to help in the barn, but he was failing. The first week he fell when my husband was supposed to get there. And the second week, it was January, we had water freezing issues in the barn. And the third week, he was ready to go, but he was running late, and he opened his email to find the directions, and he got an email saying, basically, don't bother coming if you're going to be late. And I don't know any dairy farmer who's been on time all the time for things, except maybe today. We are all here today on time. Anyway, so I think it comes down to the people that you put in place to run these and carry out these programs, and how important they are. Our soil conservationist came out and brought the class to our house on her own accord. And that was just amazing that she did that and was willing to kind of, like I said, meet us halfway. But big picture wise, I think that, and I don't have any specific routes in mind in how to get there, but as far as a regulatory and legislative burden go, I think we need to somehow figure out how to promote and attract companies, businesses to invest in processing. And I know that there's an investment going on in St. Albans, but we need more. I think we need more facilities in general in the Northeast. There are plants that have been shuttered for whatever reason, whether it's they've become outdated or whatever the case may be. I mean, the facts are, it costs money to transport milk places. And I think that's the pressure that we're seeing, especially with the recent closure, the ever increasing fuel costs and repair costs. And I mean, you talk about 2021, and we were looking forward to having a relatively decent milk price year, which hasn't played out because we haven't had the recovery in the economy that we were expecting, because we haven't gotten through the COVID-19 pandemic as we thought we might. So instead of an increase of $1.25 or something that we were expecting in January, I think we're maybe going to see a 25-cent increase in milk price this year. But at the same time, there's been all this discussion about inflation and inflation pressures. Well, I'll tell you what, farmers have been facing, they're some of the first to face inflationary pressure, whether it's labor costs, lack of labor availability, grain prices went through the roof back in March. A lot of that had to do with speculators who ultimately exit the market, and prices have come back some, but fuel costs are up. I mean, everything is up, and we've just paid for it. So in some of those old ways to beat inflationary pressures, such as pushing gross revenue, have been sort of limited. So we're trying to keep moving forward with one hand behind our back for some of us and two hands for others. I could go on all day, guys. I'm sorry. I don't mean to use up everyone's time, but
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for your thoughts. Any other questions from the task force? Yeah, so if we could move on to.
Yep, sure. So thank you very much. I'm certainly available outside of the meeting time if you'd like to catch up more. Thank you.
We're kind of on a tight schedule, so
I just wanted to talk about close the markets.
yeah,
Horizon's closed. They're going to be able to shut down Milton out west.
we have a whole meeting scheduled to, and hopefully we'll be able to address that issue at our next meeting. Okay. Okay, thank you. And can we hear from Mary next?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Mary White. My husband and our family, we farm in Corinth, Vermont, which is in Orange County. We are a certified small farm. This morning I milked 113 cows, and we probably run total milking herd around 125 with the dry cows. We also raise all our own replacements, and just like Joanna, a couple beef steers, mostly for family use, but our total head on the farm is around 245. So a little history about our farm is we've actively been farming in the town of Corinth since 1899. And my husband and I would be the fifth generation of whites to farm here. And we've been at our current location since 1950. So we're very, very committed to our community and the land, and it's something that we really hope to be able to continue. Our current setup is a combination between a tie barn and a freeze stall. For our milking herd, we still milk in our old tie barn, which was originally built in the 50s, added on to in the 80s. It's an 82 cow barn. And we have an overflow freestyle barn, which we added to encompass all of our milking herd. So milking efficiency is one of the things we would love to improve on. It's pretty time consuming at this point, switching all the cows in and out of the barn twice a day. Just between the two barns, you know, we're grateful to have the facility we have, but due to low milk prices and various other topics, which we'll get into, we haven't really been able to invest the infrastructure back into the farm that we really need to increase our efficiencies. So that's been one of our largest struggles. Total acreage that we farm is around 350 acres. We planted 102 acres of corn this year. We do have a custom harvester come in and plant and chop our corn for us. It's just more feasible. We just don't have enough hours in the day to make it consistent. So we utilize custom cropping for that, but we do all our own hay ground. We probably do 180 acres of hay, mostly silage, some round baling, but when you only have 3-4 hours in the middle of the day in between milkings to get your hay in, it's very difficult for us to try to do that. And land availability here is actually, as less and less farms, we're one of the only 2 dairy farms left in our community. It's actually been very competitive. We're having to compete with hobby farms and other people of that nature, smaller diversified farms that want to use neighboring land that we could utilize as well. So a little different situation than what Joanna's experiencing in her community. We ship all our milk to Cabot Agrimark. We've been with them for a very long time. But due to the base program that was implemented, we are a small farm, so we operate very similar to all the other small farms, but we are above that 2 million production cap that Joanna was talking about. We're actually producing 3 million pounds. So the base program was very difficult for us to adjust to. Again, we operate we are a small farm. We operate as a small farm, but we missed that production cap. We're over that cap. So we had to really look at our management practices and figure out how are we going to make this work with our production. And we have since adjusted. It's been difficult. But, we kind of made a business plan going forward, but the first few months were very difficult for us with that new base program that was implemented, just being a small farm above the 2 million cap. So I would say, just as Joanna mentioned, the milk prices over the last 5 years, we've seen everything from $13 to $21. Our break-even cost is closer to 17 to 18. And again, that's because we really haven't invested the infrastructure that we'd like to move the farm forward. We always keep saying maybe next year, maybe next year. So we're still working on business plans to try to figure out our next steps. But that's really been the reason we've been able to sustain, is using our older facilities. And again, our efficiency isn't great right now, something we'd really like to improve on, but it's just not feasible at this point. So I am self-employed. I do work off the farm. I run a small farm and crop insurance business right here from our farm. My husband and I are both active in the farm. I'm in the barn mornings and evenings as well. He's there all day long. So I would say the biggest challenges we're facing right now, one is price stability. Two would be inflation cost. Joanna alluded to the grain prices rising. And equipment costs, we're still getting paid the same for our milk that we did in the 80s. And just all this inflation is very difficult for any business to absorb. So we're struggling with that. And I will say we do require labor. We usually have 1 full-time employee and 2 part-time employees, along with family labor, to run the farm. A few months ago, I put out a job ad for local labor. And I had 6 people that seemed very interested, very knowledgeable about farming. They wanted to come and interview. So we set up interview times for 6 different people, and none of them even bothered to show up. So that's the labor situation we're experiencing right now. I know it's all over now, but it's been an agriculture issue for a while, especially just with a small farm setup. It's very hard to attract the type of candidates that we really need. And less people know how to milk cows. Nobody wants to milk cows. High schoolers aren't looking for jobs that are as labor intensive anymore. So labor availability has been an increased struggle for us. And in the future, we're looking for other solutions, and robotics has come up as one of those solutions for us. So we're trying to figure out how to make that viable on our farm going forward to increase our efficiency, cow comfort, and our reliance on labor. So kind of jumping over to the risk management standpoint, I am very involved in risk management, just being an insurance person by nature. So we do utilize the DMC program, the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. That's the USDA program that everyone's very familiar with. We buy in at the 95% level, $950. And the last few years, it's been a good program for us to invest in as a small farm. Usually our premiums are paid within that first check that comes. So anything after that is just an added plus to the checkbook, which is usually spent before it gets here, but it's great to keep our operation running. We have bought DRP insurance. That's an independent insurance, dairy revenue protection. That one's hit or miss for a small farm, just based on the market pricing. What happened during COVID was the class 3 pricing increased dramatically based on the CMEs in the market, but that price due to the PPD was never actually reflected back in our milk checks, and it just really negatively affected the whole program itself. And it was very disheartening to, as you watch the CME market, you get very, very hopeful that these class 3 prices are going to hold, and just never seeing that back in your milk check is very disheartening. So it's a good program. Again, I think it works better for a larger farm that doesn't necessarily use DMC, but as a small farm, I would say DMC is our best insurance risk management at this point. We do use other avenues, such as working with UVM Extension, FSA programs, the Vermont Housing Conservation Board we've worked with for some manure management grants. We recently put in a manure pit in the midst of COVID last year, working with NRCS and the Agency of Agriculture. So that was a huge labor savings for us as far as not having to spread and stack every single day. So we've seen benefits from that. We've also seen benefits back to the land as far as nutrient management goes, being able to really time when we want the nutrients on the land versus just having to spread or stack every day. So we have transitioned in the last 10 years from minimal tillage on our tilling ground to completely no-till. And we've seen the benefits there. We've been utilizing cover cropping as well as the cover cropping programs that are available through the state and USDA as well. We custom crop out the corn, but we do all our own hay ground. And, you know, I really think for a farm our size, just with our current need for labor, robots are going to be in our future, or our farm really isn't viable going forward in the current market. So it's, again, something we're struggling with, something that we're working on, and we hope to see a foreseeable future. But looking towards the future, I would say my main concerns, one is commerce. How do we incentivize processors to want to do business in Vermont and use Vermont milk? And again, I said the keyword I think is incentivize. We don't want to necessarily put more fees on them that we would hope will go back to the farmer at some point, but how do we incentivize them to want to use Vermont milk and be here and really expand processing? Commerce is always an issue. As we know, look at what's happening with Horizon right now. I can tell you that is on the back of every single dairy farmer's mind. It's just the reality of the market right now, conventional or organic or grass-fed. It's just that security of not knowing if you're going to have a home to ship your milk. So it's a huge issue that I think the state should address. And I know you guys have talked a lot about how do we get maybe a tax or something back into the farmer's pocket. And I think looking at these state programs that, you know, Maine, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, that are already out there, I don't think any of those would necessarily be adoptable to our situation here in Vermont. But there's definitely good information out there and examples that maybe we could pull things from and hopefully modify something here that would work for farms. We've already lost 30 farms from January to July of this year. And again, that kind of just goes under the radar, which is very disheartening. We're going to continue to lose more. So we need to find a viable program to move Vermont forward. And I'd be happy to open up for questions or discuss anything or any ideas that you all might have.
Thank you, Mary. Questions from the task force? Don't. Bobby.
Yeah, Mary, have you figured out what your average pay price has been like over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so our average pay price was very consistent, almost with our break even. It was about around $17.50. And again, COVID was kind of I don't want to say a fluke year, but that's when we saw those $13 prices kind of hit the bottom. So we were able to stay afloat, but barely.
And shipping to Agrimart, do you get a 25th check or bonus check from profits from the cheese industry that Cabot is producing?
I don't know if I'd call it a bonus check. We get our equity. We have equity in the company, so we always, you know, based on what level you're at with your ownership in your farm. I think it goes by the amount of time you've been a member. You'll get some equity payments back from the cooperative.
Yep. Thank you.
And so just to clarify that a little bit, you know, it's not a gigantic, you know, we've been members for a long time. And I think it paid grain for 1 week, just to kind of put that into context a little bit. It's not a $1 million check by any means.
I had questions follow up on Bobby's question. Where does your milk go?
So yeah, our milk actually travels down the interstate. So it goes right down 91 to the West Springfield plant. And, you know, we're probably only an hour east of Cabot, Vermont, where that plant is, but most milk usually flows south. So our milk goes right down the interstate to the West Springfield Agrimark plant.
So your milk is not going to either of the Cabot plants in Vermont. It's going to the powder plant down in West Springfield.
Correct.
And also following up on what Bobby asked, is your milk price tend to follow the regulated pricing structure, higher or lower, and, you know, mailbox compared to the federal order price?
So we do get a quality premium that Agrimark has a program for. It has actually decreased over the last 2 years. They revitalized the program some, but there is some for quality. So it tends to maybe be a couple cents more, depending on your quality as a producer, than the Boston blend price.
And on balance, is your mailbox price above or below month to month, the Boston, calling it the Boston price?
Again, you know, quality does vary throughout the year too, but it's usually a couple cents above.
Okay.
But, you know, when you look at some of the Boston blend forecasting, you know, when they were forecasting 14.50, it still puts us very well below our cost of production, which I said, you know, is really not sustainable for our farm going forward. So we need to really figure out what our price would be going forward to keep the farm viable and sustainable for our business.
So the only addition is quality, but you have deductions, obviously, you know, that make up your mailbox price. So
yeah, so hauling has been a huge topic. Agrimark recently just redid all their regions for hauling and increased some rates. You know, truckers are having a hard time finding people to drive trucks. One, availability, you know, it's just like farming. It's a constant 365 job. So there's late hours. I know our milk gets picked up sometimes at 11 p.m. And sometimes it's 1 a.m. So and that was very difficult with the base program too, especially on those last day of the month, not knowing what day your milk was going to get picked up technically and what month it was going to count for. But hauling has been a huge increased cost to our cooperative in general.
John, you had a question? You got it. Yeah.
I didn't really have a question. I had a response to both of your remarks. As a former Agrimark producer myself, you know, Agrimark did not have the 25th milk check system that St. Albans had. But we did get profits when there were profits through our equity, and often in form of a cash payment. And I also got rewarded substantially. As everybody pretty much knows, I had a colored breed of cow, which had higher fat and protein. So we averaged $1.50 to $1.75, 100 higher than the Boston price on a regular basis. So quality is awarded part of the process.
So as I mentioned, they did change that program recently for the quality program. So I am sure that you did receive some great funds, but that program has since changed, I'm sure, since you were farming. We've got a couple of questions on the Zoom. Heather, did you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Mary. Thanks for joining us today. I have kind of two questions. I think the first one is, do you think that the state of Vermont does an adequate job at promoting our agricultural uniqueness?
I think there is definitely room for improvement in that area. I think we do have a uniqueness here in Vermont, and as they become less and less farms and people are more removed from farming, that topic can always be expanded on. And, you know, we recently passed the agritourism law, which I think was a great step in the right direction. But now how do we utilize that as well as other regulations to really get the public and get consumers involved with farming and knowing who their local farmers are and what exactly we're doing. So I think that's a great avenue for improvement.
So my kind of related question, I think, and maybe plays a little bit off of a couple of Joanna's comments, and I'm sure things that we'll continue to hear from all the farmers is that farmers are meeting these water quality conservation requirements. Do you think all farmers, regardless of size, do you think the state of Vermont could use the fact that all of our farms are meeting a very high standard of conservation to promote the type of milk and the way it's produced in our state? Instead of looking at it as a regulation, look at it as an opportunity to set ourselves apart.
I think that would be helpful. The problem when you look at a co-op like Agrimark and something like that is, you know, my milk is Vermont milk, but it gets processed in West Springfield, and we have New York farmers as well. I know when we did the Vermont seal, there was a certain percentage of milk that had to be from Vermont to get that seal. So that would be something to consider, you know, and DFA too on a conventional market. There's a lot of milk pooled in different regions as well. So I think it'd be hard for some of the larger co-ops unless, you know, we really set standards on, okay, you use a percentage of Vermont milk or something along those lines to meet that standards for promotion.
Yeah, I guess I found it interesting that I saw Agrimark or Cabot was putting signs up about conservation on farms, and lots of big corporations promoting quote unquote regenerative ag. And once again, seeing that farmers are not benefiting from this work that they're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Representative O'Brien.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, I know you're a frequent witness in House Ag, and I know you know a lot of dairy farmers that way, and I know you know a lot about risk management. And so I'd love to have you talk about, I think probably the number one risk management tool has been one member of dairy farm families now works outside the farm, and that's a consistent source of income. And in lieu of, say, government support, dairy farmers have figured out that that's the subsidy that keeps our farm going. So do you find that true sort of across all Vermont dairy farms?
I will say, when I was in college, one of my professors said, make sure you either, if it's your family farm, marry someone that has a job, or vice versa. That was one thing I took away from one of my college professors, but it is true. I know farmers though that they both work on the farm and maybe they have some diversified income and that they do just fine, but it's definitely a benefit and something that we've seen more frequently, and even in past generations too, we've seen it as well. But it is a tool. I wouldn't necessarily want to call it a risk management tool. I would hope that farms are able to sustain themselves as businesses, or it's really not a viable business to begin with. So we really need to make sure that we are using other resources other than maybe, say, you know, family support and on the farm income to really look at these farms going forward as businesses with business plans, and how do we be valuable for the future.
Representative, and I'd also like to say, I think when we hear about people working off farms like Mary and Joanna and some of the others, they still have full-time businesses. And the sad part about dairy farming is they are businesses and they are full-time for the families that live on them. And it's a sad state of affairs that they have to work as opposed to wanting or wishing to work just to get off the farm a little bit. But, you know, people have always done it. We used to have the ladies with the chicken and egg money years ago and the butter money, just to support themselves. I would really love someday if these folks could work on the farm because that's where they want to be. And if they want to have a job offsite to get a better understanding of what's going on in the world, then that's wonderful too. But ultimately, our goal should be, these are businesses, it's just like running a restaurant. How many jobs do you want these folks to have to make it a viable profession?
Right. It must be unusual though, as far as jobs and economy goes. It'd be like, as you bring up, Jackie, a restaurant. How many restaurateurs say work at National Life to keep their restaurant going?
Yeah.
So
Definitely an economic part of, any can be part of any family business, for sure. So I definitely hear that.
Thank you. If we don't have any other questions, we can move along. We're on a pretty tight schedule here. So
Thank you.
thank you for your comments, Mary, and we'll hear from Andy, please. Oh, you're on mute still, Andy. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, great. So I'm Andy Birch. My wife Sarah and I run Maple Grove Farm in Derby. This morning we milked 51 cows. We have 7 dry cows and about 30 heifers. This is a farm that my parents bought as first generation farmers in 1988. They ran it for 17 years before they decided they were burned out and sold the dairy herd. My wife and I came back a little over 7 years ago and put a new herd of cows in it. And we were among the last members to join Agrimark before they closed the membership the following year. We milk in a very antiquated tie stall barn, a converted bank barn. And we have a pipeline milking system with basically no fancy bells and whistles, no auto detachers or anything. The farm, we have about 100 acres of hay ground and 30 acres of corn, about 100 acres of forest land. I don't really do anything with that since my dad still owns the farm. He uses it mostly for his own firewood supply and occasionally selective cut. For my immediate family, our sole source of income is the farm. My wife and I are both full-time there, and we support ourselves exclusively from farm revenue. Since my parents sold their cows in 2005, they've both had full-time jobs in town for UVM Extension and for Poulin Grain. And we really aren't diversified at all, except that my wife sells a few eggs here and there. But other than that, we're all dairy. As far as cropping goes, the corn is custom planted and harvested end to end. I don't have any machinery for that. It makes most economic sense to have that be custom harvested. My parents do a lot of the work with the forage crops, with the hay. They still own all of the machinery, and it's honestly a lifesaver to have their labor available too to help with that, trying to keep the farm running at the same time. And so we just have an arrangement that I pay my dad for every round bale I use, and that's kind of the cleanest way to run that side of the operation. As far as innovations, we've tried to be fairly progressive with nutrient management. We replaced our aging liquid manure system from the late 80s 3 years ago with a modern concrete lagoon. We've used cover cropping and no-till cropping, and the last couple of years we've tried some manure injection on the cornfields that allow it. For the most part, though, we've been somewhat limited as far as the size of the investments we can make, given that we only have really 50 cows to draw revenue from, and we started out with a sizable loan when we got started, which we just paid off a couple months ago. And as far as what I'd like to improve on my farm, I would love more modern facilities that would give us a little bit of a break, reduce our labor, and perhaps even allow us to produce more milk more efficiently, so that we can have higher revenue to go along with it. And I certainly have considered robotics. At this point, we're mostly trying to figure out how we can transfer the farm real estate from one generation to the next. And hopefully the following step will be figuring out what we can do with the facilities to make them more efficient for us, so that we can stand doing this for the long term. We have installed some energy efficiencies on the farm. We don't have a plate cooler or variable speed pump, but we do have a new free heater that saves us a tremendous amount of energy on making hot water, especially in the summer, and helps cool our milk faster. And over the last 5 years, my cost of production has been $18.25. And over the same period of time, the mailbox price for me has been $19.18, which is about $2 above the Boston blend, mostly due to quality and higher than average components. Over the same period of time, even though my milk margin has only been about $1, the total margin for the farm has been about $4 a hundredweight, due to either beef sales or the government programs like DMC. Let me get back to the Zoom window here. And the price paid for milk is certainly a big challenge. Without DMC, we'd be in a world of hurt right now. Basically, that's covering our family living expenses, and the farm is about breaking even or slightly better than breaking even, at least this summer. Our cost of a load of grain for 20 tons had been mostly $7,000 to $8,000 since we started 7 years ago, and this summer it's been $9,000 routinely. As far as other challenges, certainly just the sheer amount of labor we have on our farm, but also trying to create any time away from the farm about takes an act of Congress. It's very difficult to find people who can occasionally fill in for us without needing weeks of training ahead of time. It's difficult to find people with that level of experience who can just show up for a couple hours ahead of time and understand more or less how things work and have the availability to do it. And that's just a function of the size we are, that we don't need a lot of extra labor. So it's difficult to fill in those big gaps here and there. And I think the risk management programs have been a big help to us, especially the dairy margin coverage program. I have been using the dairy RP program since the beginning of the pandemic. I haven't seen a return from it yet, which is good. It means that milk prices haven't fallen substantially from the time I booked those contracts. But at the same time, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue doing it for the long term. I have half of my milk covered through that program, through Dairy RP, through the end of next year. And as far as the dairy margin coverage program is concerned, I have 95% of my milk covered at the $9.50 level. And I did work with NRCS and VHCB when we did the manure pit project 3 years ago, and that was a huge help. That definitely made our farm more environmentally friendly and cut our manure spreading costs in half because we didn't have as much water coming into our manure system. And I think that's the entire sheet of questions I had, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
John?
Hi, Andy. It's good to see you. Do you have any suggestions on what the state might be able to assist any farmers with? We've heard discussions about processing plants. We've had talks about paying the insurance, the risk management costs for farms. We've had a lot of different discussions, but what's on your mind as to what we might be able to help you with?
Well, if there were easy answers, I think we would have done them already. But certainly, I think processing capacity is a huge issue for us. That's part of the reason that Agrimark has and other co-ops have these base programs, that they don't have enough processing capacity themselves to handle all of their milk, and there aren't enough buyers outside to sop up all of the excess. So without that market to put the extra milk into, there's just nowhere for it really to go, and we have to clamp down on everyone. I'm small enough, fortunately, that the base program doesn't really affect me much right now. I could still grow another 800,000 pounds almost, but it also kind of hems in what we might be able to do in the future. If we ever decided to build a 2-robot freestall barn, that would probably take 3 million pounds of capacity when we can only easily do 2 without making waves at the co-op or having to find additional base. So yeah, I think working with the Vermont brand and trying to bring more capacity locally, I think that would be the most important thing. That and I think we're already working on programs to reward innovation on the environmental front, and I think that's a wonderful thing too, to make it rewarding to take care of our environment and our neighbors.
Thank you.
Yeah. Andy, good to have you with us this morning. You send your milk to Agrimark. Does your milk go to Cabot, or does yours get shipped south?
My milk for the last year and a half has been going to Cabot exclusively. Before that, I was on a mixed load with St. Albans and DFA members, and my milk had been going to the West Lynn plant in Massachusetts, which is now closed. And then it was going to Franklin, and now I'm on an Agrimark only load going to Cabot.
And is that why you get a premium on your milk? And I think you said you averaged a pay price of $18.50, which is well above the Boston mailbox price. So are you getting premiums on that milk because it's going to the cheese plant?
No, as far as I know, I'm paid on the same scale as everyone else, but with my components running higher than average, that has given me since January 1st, 2016 to now, my pay price has been $19.18. And I think that's just a function of having fat above 4%, and protein at about 3.3% plus the quality premium.
Very good. Thank you, Andy.
I just had one question for you. You mentioned the idea of a setup with 2 robots and 3 million pounds. Is that what you see for yourself in the future if the market is stable and could support that price wise? Is that how you see your future expansion in that frame?
I think that would be a good option if we could afford to do it and had a market for all of that milk, and the land availability. We don't have enough land today to milk 120 cows. So one robot for 60 cows might be more realistic. But as far as creating enough profit above the cows to support two people, a family of four, it might take 120 cows, especially if we were adding on construction debt.
You've given it, you've thought about it. That's pretty clear. That's good.
Yep.
Thanks. Any other questions? John?
A kind of a question for all three of you, smaller farmers. I'm, in all the different things you've considered on how to make your farms profitable, have any of you ever considered going organic? And if you're not organic now, so why did you, if you did consider it, why did you not take that option?
For me, I like the broader scope of management tools that I have as a conventional farm. Certainly for being able to grow corn where I do in the hills of Derby, I think that would be very difficult to do organically. And with no-till cropping. And as far as being able to have a full range of treatment options if our animals get sick. Maybe for me, it wasn't strictly a business decision. It was somewhat an ethical one. I like to have all of the tools, all of the modern tools available at my disposal.
Okay, I think we'll move on to our next witness who's here in the room. And we'll hear from Brett. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you for having me come speak. Front a lot, but I'm actually a small farm. I milk, you put categories being
Yeah.
medium. I milk about 185 cattle.
That's good.
Probably 10 dry cows, so I'm right at the thing. I have a double 10 parallel, the 1970s.
I don't mean to interrupt, but if you could just say your name for the record.
Oh, Brett Urey.
That'd be good. And where
Sorry,
your farm is.
Craftsbury.
Okay, great, thanks.
So, and I have it's a 1970 herringbone parlor, but I was lucky enough back in 2009 to put a new barn up with slotted floors with underground storage. Because I always figured we're in a cold climate rainforest basically here. And that's helped a lot, my nutrient management plan. I own 950 acres and only 300 of that is tillable. I rent another 200 acres. I do about 100 acres of corn. The rest is all grass. We do have a cheese plant, but we aren't using it right now. We're in the renovations. I don't have my cost of production, but I don't think that matters. It's still going. I mean, we could look up on the pay price. That's all out there in the Boston market, what we're getting. I always try to do quality, so I get the extra for what I can for quality. I do have some wood. We do some logging, but it's not really great land to log on. I have no sugaring. And what I did take in logging, I always put back in improvements on my land. There's nobody has anything off the farm for a job. Yeah, its biggest prop is the price of milk. And the big challenges is feed, fertilizer, and fuel. That's the big challenge right now. I do have risk management because I'm a caring dairy member. I'm with DFA too, so I was with St. Albans. Crop insurance with FSA, I do some work with them. Crop insurance, I do have corn under insurance, never had a claim. Extension, mainly phone, and a private contract is you call Ben and Jerry's. I do things through Ben and Jerry's, be part of it. I do the dairy margin with that at the highest level right now. That's helpful. Let's see, base. Yes, for the base, the biggest thing with the base, it did hurt things. because it happened with the Corvid, and my daughter was coming down, and I have one part-time employee. We shut them down. So me and my wife ran the farm for a month almost. And then it's been major consolidation. I've lost my neighbors. Because you can buy their base up, and that's what's happened. I look at it. I'd like to do better things with the heifers on my farm, but it's all money. I do custom crop everything because I don't have the time to do that. It works very well for me. They come in, I have Kelly come in, they do it, do a good job. I do no-till, I do cover crops. I don't know drag lining. I don't think that's feasible, but I wonder maybe irrigation down the road. That might be something more feasible. Yeah, I've done efficiency things. I wanted, except for now, I want to add a plate cooler, but they don't do that anymore because that's a no-brainer. I said, what about these ROs? Oh, we'll still do those. It seems like that's a no-brainer, but that's fine. That's efficiency Vermont. I have no solar. I one time had computerized feeders back in the 80s, 90s, but I don't have that anymore. I do all TMR. What to help? I think the state could maybe do something more with a roofed cattle yard. It's like we need cattle yards. Where I'm at, I need a roofed one because I can't have anything go off wrong. Okay, for the water quality, we have the no-till seeder. They helped. I went with 3 other farms to get a no-till seeder, and they help. The state helps with the rye for. I did 1 lane out back for the pasture, but it's very tough to get hold of anybody. It's slow. I called the state, and it took 2 years to get that payment done. The Corvid didn't help, I'm sure. So it's hard to get the funding to do anything because it's not available easily. Things on the task force. I think we need to get our market back with fluid milk. So we need to somehow get whole milk back in schools. It's been 20 years. I think it's been way too long. And maybe we could we all pay for advertising. Now we've lost 15% of our, why can't we get all the advertising that we pay out for our milk check? Maybe the state do something to do advertising. I was thinking, I loved Ellie. That was the best commercial I've seen the state do forever. It's like, that was what we want. That was the best commercial I've seen. Yeah. Let's see. And I think we got to stand up for dairy. That's the second thing I think we do. That's the task. And there's a lot of arrogance out there. People go, oh, farm like your granddad. Well, there's very few. You don't farm like, I don't farm like my father did. And you always hear livable wage. Well, I get a lot of investment. I can't just get a livable wage. I need a return on my investment. And then we have a little toxicity out there. The auditor of accounts goes at us, and we just left. No one says anything. All the money they spent on dairy. And I think we have some elected officials that are on the ag committee that aren't supportive of ag. So I think we got to stand up for dairy. I think the third thing, I think we're overregulated a little bit. I'm a landowner and I have rights, but now we're talking wetlands, corridors, and that's all for the public good. Well, I should be compensated for that, maintaining that. It's not like just you take it away from me. So that's what I look at. So we have a living document for fairness to farmers. Thank you. I'm not a great speaker, but I appreciate listening to me.
We might have some questions for you.
I can.
I have a feeling you're good at answering questions, very straightforward. And
I'm with DFA, I guess I didn't say that. So
No,
now
you
you
did,
got a
yeah.
small farm with DFA.
yeah,
Yeah. It's good to have you with us, Brent. we chat a little bit when we
I try to
can
call, I like to talk to people one on one, not used to big surrounds.
when we can
Pretty
catch
small
each
group,
other
so.
on the phone, we do talk. Um, But anyways, you mentioned you're in the Caring Dairy
Yes.
program. And we've had people comment about that, but nobody has really told us much about how it works and if it works and you know, what you think of that particular program that's sponsored basically by a private company, Ben and Jerry's, right? And how does that work on your farm?
It's work, I mean, it's maybe probably better in some aspects, doing things like rotating more, like land. I mean, I only have so much corn land, but they're changing over to a global. I think that's gonna be tough, because they're looking at England and every place is different. I think that's, we've instituted certain things that work in the country for this state. It's like, maybe we should look at this state, how we do things differently. Because we're in a different, well, I think we're a rainforest up here. We get a lot of rain compared to a lot of places.
And
And so that's what a part of our pollution problem is, because we've had so much rain that comes down unexpectedly.
do they compensate you though for certain practices or different practices or?
Yes, you're compensated now. It's it's a big chunk of change. I wouldn't want to be not with it, but it's tough to go through the procedure. I let my daughter do most of that.
Yeah.
She's back at the farm with me now too. Well, part-time.
So it works pretty well, you'd say, or?
Yeah, 'cause it's something, it's another avenue I can find money.
Yeah.
Be in the state.
And then the other issue is during this last year, we have put together some help with the federal money that we received as a state to help farmers with their, has that worked fairly smooth for you, or is there ways of improving that process so that it would flow easier or make?
My daughter did, it worked pretty well, but it seemed like it was watered down at the end. It first cost 21 million and then everybody needed this. New Hampshire's a lot better there, farmers. Made it much easier.
Yeah.
So I think they watered it down what they said they were gonna give us originally. And they found other areas they put it at. I mean, it was helpful. I'm not gonna say it wasn't helpful.
If I remember right, we took applications, you know, throughout the year, then there was a shut off date, then we extended it because there was still extra money that hadn't been asked for. So I was just wondering, I figured we would run out of money, but we had money left over. So I didn't know what the problem was.
No, I mean, like at the point, not a medium farm, small farm, so it didn't. It's probably better off to a smaller person. Yeah, they have this off the. So I hit that max
You hit
point
the
at my
cap.
farm, yeah.
No
I
hands,
just wanted to add one thing.
please.
She's my wife.
I'm Marjorie Gary. And.
Let's just make sure, are we picking up?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You were talking about Karen Garrett. You know, and it is an incredible amount of work to meet those standards. Even though we get a big paycheck from them, it takes a lot of money and a lot of time to go through what they require of us. And my problem with Karen Garrett, which we have had great, love people that have worked there, but there's also a piece of the puzzle that isn't farm friendly. The migrant justice movement is horrible on farms, horrible. And so there are pieces of that puzzle that are very difficult. We don't have migrant labor, so we didn't have to participate, but we have friends that have. And it isn't that easy. It's worth doing. And like Brett said, we rotate our crops, it hasn't improved what we do, energy wise, those pieces. But it's not.
We've been no-tilling for over 5
But
years.
it's not an easy program to be a part of, because Brett was alluding to, there's a lot of people telling you what to do at your farm that have never worked on.
Well, they're using the global.
And they
That's gonna be a
never-
new, I don't know what, we're gonna go through that this year and see what that might be.
That's just my take.
We did hear about that, the new, it has to do with cows, and I've looked up the rules, it will be challenging.
I think it's what they do in England. My boy was over there and they're following that course.
How long have you been in the caring dairy program?
5 years.
7 years.
As when initiated.
Yeah, initially.
From the start then.
Yeah, we started, they aren't taking anymore, they claim. It's only a certain amount they take, what they use.
Can you tell us how your base excess plan works?
I just started cutting cane, found it. I mean, I was over base for a while. I lost money.
So you reduced your feed.
I roosted grain and tried to, I always fed milk to the calves anyway.
Brett, did I hear you say you partially graze your cows or?
I have heifers out there and I could set the whole place up for grazing now because I did an FSS, but I haven't done that yet. And it works great. When it's wet, you can make a mess.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Don't see any hands, so thank you. Rebecca, we see your name.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Wonderful.
We can hear you now.
My name is Rebecca Manning and I farm in Swanton with my family. We milk around 520 cows. We have about an additional 90 dry cows. I farm with 2 of my brothers, my father, and my grandparents. We raise all of our own replacements. Our calves are raised in hutches outside year-round. After they graduate from the hutches, they move to freestall type housing for the rest of their lives. We milk in a double 12 rapid exit parlor. We milk with 2 people in the parlor. Our parlor was built in 2005 and 2006 after we lost our old parlor to a barn fire. So we made the choice to rebuild and that process took 9 months to the day until we were able to milk at home again. The primary source of income on our farm is fluid milk. My grandfather has a small plastics business as an ag bag dealer. He sells bunker plastics and ag bags to other farmers throughout the region. My brother has started a value-added beef, pork, and poultry stand, but that is his own side venture and not a source of income for the farm itself. I personally do not have off-farm income, and I am able to support myself and my 2 children through my farm salary and also my frugal ways. We harvest our own crops, but we often hire a custom operator to merge hay crops, and we hire 1 or more trucks to help us haul feed. Although there is a great expense to harvesting our own crops, it does not leave us at the mercy of a custom harvester who is often trying to fit many farms into the same small window of good weather opportunity. This allows us to put up top quality forages and minimize our purchased feed costs. The price of milk is by far our largest obstacle. Labor is also a very real struggle. Finding ample quality employees is incredibly difficult. And once you acquire an employee of high caliber, it is equally difficult to retain them due to the high cost of living in Vermont. Not only is it difficult to find non-family labor, it is difficult to bring on family to an industry where it is common knowledge that you're working for personal passion, not financial gain. It is a sad fact that those who provide the food for the masses survive off of their own pride to live with less or live without, rather than a stable, sufficient salary. It's a cultural problem that a majority of the country lauds efficiencies in manufacturing and technology, but efficiencies in agriculture are demonized. Similarly, here in Vermont and across the country, people are extolling a livable wage while also purchasing the lowest cost items available. As dairy farmers, we see that as our cost of production has exceeded our pay price every single year for the past 5 years. We are constantly trying to add innovations when we can. In the past 10 years, we have utilized pedometers on our cows to track heat detection and identify some health issues. We use a program called TMR Tracker to update rations for the cows in real time, as well as monitor intakes by pen. Our chopper is equipped with a yield monitor to track yields, which allows us to access fertilizer needs as well as choose crop varieties that best suit our farm. Our corn planter is set up with a no-till planting system, which we utilize to increase soil health and minimize compaction. We have been planting cover crops on our corn acres for close to 10 years. We utilize the tile drainage in our fields where it is appropriate to increase efficiency, increasing yields on the same acreage. We would like to purchase a drag line system to incorporate our manure, which would improve water quality and reduce compaction, as well as reduce fertilizer use and fuel usage. It would also reduce wear on equipment, as well as the amount of heavy equipment on our roads. As I said earlier, our young stock are on pasture. We would like to be able to have a calf and heifer facility so that they would not have to be on pasture year round. In the future, at some point, I think that a robotic milking system would be beneficial to alleviate the struggle with finding, retaining, and managing employees. We need to update our feed storage area to improve water quality, feed quality, and reduce feed losses. It would be beneficial if the programs through the state were less specific. There are many programs available, but they are often incredibly specific as to where the monies must be spent, which often leaves important projects ineligible. I think Brett just touched on this with some of his testimony as well. Less restrictive policies regarding how these monies can be spent would be beneficial. We looked seriously at robotic milking systems when we rebuilt our barn after our fire in 2005. At that time, robots were very new, and we were not sure that they would be here to stay. We have looked at computerized feed systems, but not as a realistic item to purchase. The costs of both of these things are beyond prohibitive. Our electric company is not taking on new large solar customers, so that also is not an option for us. We did look up no fence fencing when we saw it mentioned in the questions that we were presented with, and while it seems very interesting, it is also very costly. We utilize many efficiency measures, including a variable speed milk pump, vacuum pump, and air compressors. We do have a plate cooler. Our milk compressors are high efficiency. We switched our lights to LED lighting, and our fans in the barn are also high efficiency. We take advantage of many risk management opportunities. We use the Dairy Margin Protection Program through FSA. We purchase crop insurance, book commodities, access grants through the VHCV, learn about new practices and access education through UVM Extension, and contract future milk prices through DFA. We are participating in the MPP at the $9.50 level, and that has been tremendously helpful this year. Risk management has at times increased our on-farm pay price, made commodity prices more stable, and increased our margins. Our cooperative, DFA, instilled a base excess program in the spring of 2020. Beginning in May of 2020, our cooperative told us we would only be receiving full payment for 85% of our milk based on our production in March of 2020. The plan was enacted as schools and restaurants closed due to COVID. A year and a half later, we are still limited on our production. We are aware that as dairy farmers, we are competing on a world market. However, we are no longer able to play on a level playing field within our own county, state, or country. Other cooperatives have gone back to base net zero. In other regions of the country, our same cooperative has less stringent or no base programs. However, as members of DFA Northeast, we have seen our operating costs rise dramatically in a COVID world, but we have been told we have to figure it out with 15% less milk. This type of risk management does not work. Risk management programs like this do not work for the farmers. They appear to be a way for the cooperatives to purchase cheap milk. A nationwide supply management system in conjunction with federal order reform is what is needed to help farmers everywhere, including farmers in Vermont. We have installed buffer strips, cover crops, and no-till all of our corn land. We have utilized the FAP, CEAP, and BMP programs, among others. In the past, we have participated in tile drainage studies through UVM. We would like to inject our manure, but it is cost prohibitive. The current money available per acre is insufficient to purchase the necessary equipment, and the caps for the programs are also too low to allow you to fully utilize the program. The most important area of opportunity is pricing reform, which is probably the area where this group has the least effect. I would encourage you to continue lobbying at the federal level for meaningful pricing reform and a federal supply management program. Supply management done at any level less than federal simply does not work and only puts farmers in those areas at a disadvantage. I would encourage this group to continue to provide access to grant funding and look to reduce the restrictions on the areas where that money can be spent. Non-milk income has been the area that has put our farm and many others above the break-even level. A sizable portion of this is cull cow sales. There are no longer any commercial slaughter facilities in the state. The vast majority of our cows who begin their second career as beef animals have to travel all the way to Pennsylvania to do so. There is a definite need in the state for a commercial meat processing facility. That is what I have prepared for you, and I would be willing to take questions.
Yeah. Have you talked to your representative from DFA to see if, how much longer they're going to keep your production at 85%?
They have moved the base from minus 15%. Now we're at minus 12%. So that has changed. I have asked that question. I know many other people have also asked that question. And the answer that we are given is that they are always assessing that this is not something that they want to be doing, but that it is necessary, and that they will continue to move that number as they see that it should be moved.
I understand that DFA works in different in zones, and that our northeastern zone is the only one that has a reduction in production and reduced it to 85%. Do you know if that statement is accurate?
I know that DFA works in regions, and that all the regions have different base excess plans either in effect now or that they are working on to go into effect in the future. I do not know what each plan in each region is.
Thank you.
Questions, members of the task force? I'm interested in your thoughts about federal order reform. Obviously, this task force can't directly affect the federal order program, but we can certainly give voice to your concerns. And also, I'm not sure your blanket statement about what the state can do in terms of prices is quite so cut and dried. So interested in your thoughts about how the price regulation can be changed.
I missed part of that question when you said it, when you were talking about the state.
Yeah, whether the state doesn't have the state may have some authority over price. So interested in your thoughts about how price regulation can be improved, both so that the task force, as part of its findings, can make suggestions, even though we don't have any direct potential impact, and also for what the state might do. But simple question, what would you like to see the federal order, how would you like to see the federal order changed?
I think that it could be made much simpler. I think that there are very few people, and I am not in that category, that actually truly understand how the federal order works and how that entire equation was made, and how it continues to work to price the milk. That it is not a simple, it is not just a simple price that I think that a lot of consumers think that it is. That, you know, that when you have asked the question to each of us, what was your pay price in each of these years? And that when we can say, you know, that the pay price was $18.09, that it is not just as simple as that. I think that what could be most effective is a federal supply management program. I think that what the cooperatives are trying to do regionally, or even smaller than regionally, cannot work, and it will not work. But a federal program could be very beneficial to farmers everywhere.
Okay, where does your milk go?
We ship to DFA. We were St. Albans members, and when St. Albans merged with DFA, we are now DFA members.
And I'm just thinking in terms of the federal order, is your milk pooled in St. Albans, or does it go somewhere else?
I believe that our milk leaves the farm and goes to the plant in St. Albans, but where it goes from there, I am unsure.
Okay. No hands on the screen. Other questions? If not, thank you very much, Rebecca, and we'll hear from
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right, perfect. Thank you for giving us this opportunity today. I'll jump right in. My name is Stephanie Pope, and I am part of a 4-generation farm on the shore of Lake Champlain in Addison County. We milk just shy of 600 cows, and we have about 90 dry cows on a separate facility. We farm about 2,000 acres, and we have about 150 acres of woodlot. We also have a cheese making facility on our property. My sister wanted to be involved in agriculture, and she did the value added cheese making, and she buys our milk from us, but we don't get any of the income from the facility. Our cost of production over the past 5 years has been as low as $16 and as high as in the $18 range. Currently, with the price of feed, it's $17.13 today. Our pay price over the past 5 years has been as low as in the 12s and as high in the $19 range. We do not have any other income or off the farm income, and we don't do maple syrup and wood lots or anything like that. As far as the biggest challenge, is milk the biggest challenge? That's a loaded question. It's a yes and no for me. The other challenges is the cost of production, especially if you put it in context. A year ago, we had cornmeal at $179, and now it's over $300 per ton. So the cost of production and the inputs have just gone through the roof, especially in the last year. Also, the availability of quality labor is a huge issue, and in Vermont, housing costs is a huge issue of that because it's always been a perk that you had on farm housing as part of your package, your employment package. And now, to put up a house, we have plenty of land to do it, but it's $30,000 to $50,000 just to get a septic in. And in our immediate area of the farm, there's only one house for sale, and it's listed for $1.3 million. So I don't think we'll be purchasing that anytime soon. As you all know, we're price takers, and we're one of the only industries that I know of that pays for trucking and hauling both ways on the farm, and our product, we pay for trucking to get it off the farm. The other big issue I see is the federal milk marketing order needs some overhaul. The negative PPD impact that we had last year was huge. It cost our operation hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. And it was due to that depooling of milk. I'm not going to pretend to understand it fully, but that is a huge issue going forward, I feel like. For risk management programs, we have crop insurance, we do DRP, we have DMC. We have partnered with the VHCB Farm Viability Program. We have gotten water quality grants, SEEP grants. So we try to keep, we do a lot of risk management on our farm. And this year, the DMC has really paid out and really paid for itself. But the DRP, I feel this year is going to add about 40 cents to our operating expense. And I don't think we're going to, quarters 1 and 2, we didn't really get paid. I think going forward by the futures, quarters 3 and 4, I think we'll get paid. So it'll be interesting to see if we break even at the end of the year with the premiums we have to pay. And we did sign up for the 950 level, and it has been a huge help with the DMC this year. Our co-op, we ship to Agrimart, and they have a base program, and they started before COVID with a supply management plan. And at that point, we had to stop expanding. We were on the road to milk about 800 cows, and we had to stop. So we kind of got caught in that, in that. As far as improvements for our farm operation, I'd love to modernize our facilities. It all comes back to money, and I would love to have a digester on site. I think that would be helpful, but again, it comes back to money as always. As far as the innovations, we do our cropping all ourselves, and we do no-till, cover cropping. We have buffers, and we purchased last year a dragline injection system with the help from grants from the VHCB water quality grant and the SEEP grant. It was a $250,000 investment. Like I said, we got some grant money, but in that $250,000, that does not include the 3 tractors that we need. So it's a huge capital investment, but we're very pleased that we were able to get one with our proximity to the lake. As far as efficiency measures, we have a variable speed pump. We have all LED lights, fans. So we do not have any solar, but we do buy solar credits from a solar farm in Moncton. We buy their solar credits. We have looked at other technologies where I have looked at robots, but they are just too costly for us right now. And also to go back, not to backtrack, but we used to milk on two farms. We had a medium farm and a small farm. And when the base program hit, we closed the small farm and consolidated all on one facility. As far as what we can do to, more innovative steps, it always comes back to the money. And when we're already strapped as it is, it's hard to come up with extra money. And then the water quality improvement programs, we participate in the EQIP program through the Natural Resource Office, and we do BMP through the state. As far as the actions that you guys can take, I know you're limited in the federal milk marketing. You had that conversation with Rebecca, but that is one concern that we have. Another thing that would be helpful is to increase milk processing capabilities for dairy. I think that's one of the issues that we're all facing right now. There's not enough processing facilities. And in Vermont, we're on a global market. So, we have soybeans grown right here in Vermont, for instance, and they're going to China, where I don't know if there's something that we can, make it state or local, keep it local and maybe more affordable all the way around. Every regulation that is put on us, dairy farmers, costs money. For instance, it costs us medium farm operations $1,500 a year to ship milk in the state of Vermont. Our nutrient management plan costs us over $7,200 a year to keep it current. So when we're already strapped for cash, every little regulation that we get adds to the cost. And I do feel like us as dairy farmers, I don't want to say everything, but a lot of the things that have been asked of us, we have stepped up and we have complied and we have tried to change. And now it's to the point where the money is just not there and it's getting harder and harder and it's all out of our control. You see good farmers going out of business and it's sad. And, when farms, just as a personal, because I know if a farm like us goes out of business, it's millions of dollars. That's all local. All our money stays local in the grand scheme of things. So it's millions of dollars and that the local economy loses out on. So I think it's very important that, we keep in mind that the dairy farmers are a huge part of our local economies in Vermont. I know that was a lot. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions? John.
Hi, Stephanie. It's great to see you. How would you think a payment for ecosystem services program, paying farmers for some of the water quality and environmental improvements they've made, do you think something like that would be a big help or any help?
Well, I think any little bit helps. And, and I know the state has been great with the BMPs and, we have the EQIP contracts, if that's what they're called. So all of that really helps. And, we want to do what's right. So, but yes, every little bit helps.
Bobby.
Yeah, Stephanie, you spoke a little bit about farm labor housing. And I'm wondering, we here in the legislature put a bunch of money in VHCB, Vermont Housing and Land Conservation Program, to help with farm labor housing. And just wanted to pass that along to you to contact them and see if they could be of help.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Where does your milk go?
So our milk is Agarmar, goes to Agarmar, and it goes to the Middlebury plant here.
Thank you.
Do you receive any premiums on your milk being used for manufacturing cheese or any of that?
No, we get quality, incentives. We get paid for quality. But as far as I know, we don't get a premium, versus other, like DFA or anything like that. We're paid based on the Boston blend.
Has your mailbox price in relation to the federal order price, how above or below with the different, you have quality on the upside and deductions? How does your milk price, your mailbox price track the regulated price?
So I guess I don't know how to answer that except for, our price last month, and forgive me, I might be off a couple of cents. I think it was like $18.60, but then you have to take out your hauling, you have to take out your the PPD, the negative adjunct, it's called. I don't know what the words are for. So it's almost $1 off from that. You know what I mean? That we're actually getting paid, but our actual pay price is called $18.60. But if you really do the math, it's not.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't.
Well,
sorry.
I think consistent message, the PPD really both has an impact on your price and complicates the calculation to understand your price as well, both.
Yeah, I took a class in college on milk pricing and I still don't understand it. So it is really, there's a lot that goes into it. But yes, the PPD is a major player in the milk price. And back to the global, the regions and stuff. So the Northeast has been on base management plans or whatever you want to call them. And the Midwest has grown leaps and bounds. And, they were getting paid over $20 100 last summer, and we were getting 15. And so they have really added a lot of cows in the Midwest. And now it'll be interesting to see how that impacts our milk price going forward.
And are you comfortable sharing how much milk you produce from 600 cows and how that ties into the base that Agrimark sets?
Yep. So right now we're on I believe our COVID base is 3% of your base. So our base for the daily base for Agrimark, I believe is, I'll call it 48,000. And our excess base program, COVID base it's called, is I think 46,700 or something like that. And I might be getting the numbers a little jumbled, but you get so that's what we can produce on a daily basis.
Thanks.
Sorry. They went from 15 to 12.
To 12, yeah.
Stephanie, I might have missed this. How many employees do you have on the farm?
So we have 9 non-family employees, and there's 6 family employees.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I missed both your hand and your hand. I apologize.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie, I just wondered quickly, when you said you thought about going to 800 cows, just where as a farm that thinking comes from? Is it economies of scale because you have a drag line or you do your own cropping, or is it the more cows you have, you make slightly more per cow. I mean, it seems if most dairy farms are at a break-even level, just from my thinking, it seems like you'd have a higher gross, but not necessarily a higher net. So just if you could discuss that decision, like if there wasn't a base, what would your sweet spot of the number of cows you're milking be?
So we support, all our employees' families, but we have 3 owner families, my husband, my parents, and my brother and his family. So it's a yes to all those questions, by the way. Your thinking is spot on. That's exactly what it is. And it comes down to, when you have more income, so you can kind of spread the debt and the cost over 800 cows instead of 600 cows. You know what I mean? Right now, we have to have everything for 600 cows. We wouldn't have to have anything more for 800 cows, maybe one more employee. And so if you put it in that terms, that was kind of our sweet spot. We didn't want to be huge, and they would have worked because we could have still stayed small and medium and had our 2 farms and kind of done it that way.
Thank you. We are right about 11 o'clock, so we've used up our break time. I'm trying, but so what's the preference? Take a 10-minute break and we'll run a little bit late, or just keep going and for another hour?
I guess we should ask the farmers if they can stay a little
Got
later.
fair question. So, Reg, Clara, can you stay an extra, and Will, can you stay an extra 10 minutes, and we'll take a 10-minute break? Otherwise, we'll continue on.
I'm okay with 10 minutes, but it depends on what everybody else thinks. I do have a little bit of a tight schedule, so 10 minutes is doable, though.
I don't care for a break.
I've got a hard stop at noon, so I'm gonna probably be the naysayer. I'd like to continue if we could, please.
I'm not hearing anybody needing, shall we say, to take a break. So let's carry forward then, and we'll hear from Clara.
Sure. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to start by thanking you guys again for this opportunity. And then thank you to all the farmers as well for your thoughtful testimonies. So I'm Clara Ayer. I'm from Fairmont Farm in East Montpelier. We milk 1,425 cows, actually across 2 locations. So we have an LFO in East Montpelier, that's 1,025 cows, and an MFO in Craftsbury at 400 cows. We're a little unique in that we run as one business, just the 2 locations. We have another 200 dry cows and another 1,000 young stock. We have freestall barns. They both have parallel parlors, both older. Our East Montpelier is a double 15, and Craftsbury is a double 8. Crop acres, we're a little over 3,500 acres in total. So that's about 1,500 acres of corn and 2,000 acres of hay. Of that, one thing, that's, I think, difficult for farms in some areas, ours included. So of that, we own about 1,350 of our 3,500 acres that we crop. So that's tough. Also wanted to mention we own about 2,000 acres that's conserved with a land trust. They've been really good partners for us. Pasture was asked about. Pasture is really pretty minimal for us. Honestly, it ends up being more of like people like to see cows out. So we put some heifers out and dry cows out in the summer. other than that, it's not like a real management thing for us. Woodland is not something we really actively track. We do have some selective logging that we do, but I don't have a good number for that for you today. Our 5-year average operating cost of production, I'd say is $16.31 a hundredweight. So one thing to note on that is that would be our operating costs. So that does not include either our debt service or depreciation or our family and management expense. And then on the other side of that, our 5-year average pay price is about $17.75 a hundredweight. So we've got like $1.45 or so a hundredweight that we need to pay our debt service and ourselves. Additional income that we have, that's one thing we've really focused on in the last several years. As far as the milk price goes, that feels like something that we don't have a lot of control over, but we can control some other stuff. So we do, again, like I had mentioned, some selective logging. We've got some manure sales. We've done some genetic sales. So that'd be dairy cows selling to other dairy farms. Meat sales, we opened like a on-farm market where we've got some pork, beef, and lamb that we're selling. We do a summer camp. We have an Airbnb rental house. And then we've also tried to increase our beef income by using more beef semen. So our calves that are going for beef are selling for more. And all that stuff is good, but it is tough. A farm our size, it's all helpful. Everything is helpful, but it's not, none of those are like gonna save us, because they're all fairly small at this point. Off-farm income was asked about. So we have 5 owners on our farm, and there's 3 of us in the younger generation. All 3 of our spouses do have off-farm jobs. 2 of the 3 provide the benefits for us, like health insurance. So like for myself, my husband works off-farm and I get my health insurance through him. Let's see, milk price being the biggest challenge. I guess I'm fairly similar to Stephanie. I mean, it's a challenge for sure. And it'd be great if that could be improved on, but it's honestly all part of the puzzle. And if we can't change milk price, there's other stuff that we could change that would be helpful. So like rising input costs, that's been talked about quite a bit. Availability of labor, especially in our area. We're not really farming in a big dairy area. And in order to get labor, we're competing not with other farms, we're competing with state or town employees, or like construction companies, things like, so it's other industries that we're needing to find our labor from. It's not coming from other farms. If it were coming from other farms, it'd have to be us providing a good enough opportunity to get people from New York or something like that. So that's really, really challenging right now. Equipment servicing right now. So we're in, like I said, East Montpelier. Some of our equipment servicing actually happens out of Albany, New York. So that's about a 3-hour drive. So that can be challenging. Another thing, spraying and fertilizer, for instance, there's not very many providers in Vermont. Our nutrient manager has talked to us about this quite a bit. We have different prices here in Vermont because there's not very many options versus over the border in other states like New York, it may be a more competitive price. let's see. Neighbor relations and public perception is a huge problem in our area. Again, not from a very big dairy area. So we have a lot of that going on. And that's part of the reason we have some of our kind of non-farm income that we've done, like our summer camps and things like that, is more to just, it's really good for us when we can provide something to the community. So that's something we spend a lot of time working on our farm. Also, I mean, this is small, but it's not. It seems like there's a lot of increased time needed for kind of outside projects, right? Like this is an example. The farms in the state have gotten less and less. So I think I looked up, we're down to in 2020, like 635 farms, something like that. Whereas in 2015, there was around 850. So, it's really important for us as farmers to show up to meetings like this and represent ourselves. But there's fewer and fewer of us to spread that around. So it seems like more time is spent, in these sorts of meetings. Risk management, we do use DMC. We're at the 950 level, like others have talked about. It's just the first 5 million pounds. So it's been helpful to us for sure. Not significant because of the cap. So as a frame of reference, for easy math, we are shipping around 45 million pounds a year. So the 5 million, is small. We also, we've started again, like others kind of around the start of the pandemic, we've started looking into some of the DRP stuff. We've bought some contracts. It's not paid out yet, which I know like Andy had mentioned means, it's good. The price has been where it should be. But those premiums are really expensive and it really hurts to write those checks. So, I mean, it's like any insurance, I suppose. It's important and we need to learn more about it. But it feels like, although it's most important for the people with the smaller margins, those people, it's really hard to write that check for the premium. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to stick with it. It feels like we may be better off to ride it out because the premiums are more expensive than we feel like we have room for right now. The co-op base excess, we feel really fortunate to have done with Agrimark. So the cuts have been less than other farmers. One thing that we did experience is we used to have 3 milking locations. One of our milking locations was a small farm. It was a 60 cow tie stall farm. We had actually temporarily closed that location for financial reasons. We thought we'd try to work on some efficiencies, cut some costs, try to pay some debt down and reopen at a later date. We kind of got caught in between. It was poor timing. So when we started milking back up, it was the month that we started in the middle of the month where we could use that month's production or the previous years to come up with our base option. And the way it worked out, we could, we only had enough base at that farm for probably a half a barn. By the time we got the denial saying that we couldn't use a different month or a different year, we had already gone over our allowed production for that farm for that month. So we moved cows out that afternoon. They went over to our freestall barn. So again, we felt really lucky that we had options, but it was like a snap decision because we were in a crunch and we merged that membership with our other membership We felt like we were backed in a corner. We didn't have an option. So we have a farm that we won't ship milk from again. Let's see. On our farm, in terms of improvement right now, the main things we're focusing on are just efficiencies and debt reduction. Those are our biggest goals right now. Innovations, a lot of the same things other people have talked about. We've done no-till corn planting since around 2008. We use cover crops on everything. We started doing like frac tanks and satellite manure pits for some of our manure spreading. We started injecting manure. We use, not in everything, but in more equipment all the time. We've got GPS technology. We use it's called a pit crawler that mixes our sand with the manure, so we don't have as much digging out at the end of the season. Things like that. All the innovations, like others have said, just take capital. In terms of in the barn, we have our calf barn is a free choice self-feeding system, which helps efficiencies. We also use SCR, which is technology that's like activity monitoring and rumination. We've also been using more beef semen, again, like I mentioned, to help with calf sales. Solar was asked about. We actually we have 4 systems on rooftops. They're not ours. We rent the roofs. And our largest system is actually only producing right now at like 40% of the estimated output. So we're really happy that it's not our system. There's dust and residue that's on the panels that they can't quite figure out why it's there and why it's not producing. The other systems are around 75%. So we're in the process right now with the company of researching cleaning mechanisms that might help. I guess that's most of it. And then there was a question about what the state can do to help take more innovative steps. And I guess I have like kind of a top 3 and then some other ideas too. So one, I feel like the state already has some systems that could be utilized better. For example, the cover crop grants, the program's capped at $8,000. So if you drill or incorporate the seed, the cap is about 178 acres that you can report and utilize that grant for. So for us, we crop 1,550 acres of corn. So, you know, there's more room in there to help people that are already using those, you know, already cover cropping. Manure spreading. I know that the ban is probably a big ask and not going to happen, but we have a very short season in Vermont, and it puts a lot of pressure on farms to act based on the calendar, not necessarily on management. So to have something in place where there's some set fields or something that can be worked with outside of the ban feels appropriate. One good example is we just started injecting our manure. It's really, really slow. That's one thing we weren't anticipating nearly as much, but it slows us down a lot. So we'll run out of time in the fall to get all of our manure done through that method because of the ban. So as we get closer, you know, we're gonna inject less because we just can't get it done. Also, interagency communication. Right now, between the Agency of Agriculture and Agency of Natural Resources, it's confusing enough for farmers, I feel like. There's a huge opportunity for improvement in communication between those two agencies, so farmers can work with one agency rather than be caught in the middle. Then some other ideas are, like the Pro Dairy program that New York has. There's a lot of opportunity in something like that. Just gives a lot of resources to farmers. We actually are fortunate to be in a Pro Dairy discussion group in New York. Because we're a Vermont farmer, we can't get all the benefits that the New York farmers get out of it. But some examples of things we get from it are benchmarking, record keeping help. It forces us to do some critical thinking on areas that we can improve, things like that. Also, I just wanted to echo, I know it was talked about whole milk in schools. I do understand that's a federal issue, but that's something that could be helpful. This is kind of a crazy idea, and I don't know how difficult this could be or not, but a database for farmers, something like reviews, testimonies of things, of implementation practices with solutions or workarounds. Like, for example, our solar issue that we ran into. If there's things that are out there that we don't all have to learn for ourselves, and there is a place we could go, that could be helpful. And it could even be simple, like when our inspections are getting done, maybe the staff has some questions that they go through and collect that data and put it up to a database that way. And then on that note, my last thing was the inspections that are done by the Agency of Ag. I don't know if this is just us or other farms. We see that we don't get the summary or write-up until 6 or more months after it happens. So Stephanie mentioned the fees. An LFO pays $2,500. An MFO is $1,500. Those are some decent fees. And the RIPs are pretty serious, and we all care about clean water and what the program is supposed to be doing. So it seems like it should be taken seriously enough that those summaries come out immediately. With technology we have now, there's no reason they can't have, tablet or something that they're out there on the farm with, and it could be an immediate thing for farmers. And from that, sometimes there's things that need to be improved on, and we have BMP funds, so hooking people up with the right connections afterwards is crucial too. I guess that's all I have prepared, but I can take questions.
Thank you very much, Clara. Do we have questions from the panel? Yes, Randy.
You had mentioned, as have others today, about the issue of labor and the effect of labor cost. Can you give us a sense for what labor cost for an individual, whether it be for an annual or an hourly cost on average for farm labor?
You mean like an average for one of our employees, not for our farm?
Yeah.
Okay, so like our truck drivers are started at $15 an hour. It's really hard because, we have like truck drivers and milkers that are kind of like a consistent, but then beyond that, it's more management type positions that have housing and other benefits as well. So it's a hard number to.
Well, that was my next question is of the labor that you hire, what percentage or what's the impact of costs other than wages and associated taxes in terms of housing for your employees?
Yeah, we have probably like 6 farmhouses. I'm not prepared with a number on that today, but I'm happy to get.
We're interested in the components of cost and the actual detail of the cost. But as you look at the cost of production, is labor included in the cost of production?
Yes.
And does the cost of production, the labor associated with it, does that include labor paid to people who are employees? Does it also include the cost that managers or owners get in terms of labor costs? Is that included in that number?
Okay, so you're talking about when I mentioned our operating cost of production. Okay, so yes, that 1631 a hundredweight includes all of our farm labor, and it would include their benefits. That includes everything that we write out of our checkbook, essentially. What it does not include is our payment to ourselves, as owners. But it also doesn't include our payments to the bank.
Okay, well, as you include payments to owners, do owners get salaries, or are owners only going to take a portion of the quote profit unquote?
We do draws on our farm. I think everybody does it a little bit different, but the draws are a specified amount.
And was included in the cost of production or excluded from that?
Excluded.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I just one question. Where does your milk go, Clara?
Oh, good. So we're an Agrimark farm, and our milk goes directly to Cabot.
The Cabot or Cabot Middlebury? Or
No,
both?
Cabot. Yep. We're
Cabot.
like 7 miles from the plant, something like that.
Okay. Okay, thanks. If no other questions, Reg, I have a question for you. If Will has a hard stop at noon, would it be possible for him to go and beg your indulgence if we run a little bit late?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Then.
Yeah, thanks, Reg. Appreciate it.
Okay, why don't we hear we hear from you?
So, you guys ready for me to start?
Please.
Can you hear me? Okay. So my name's Will Gladstone. I farm in Bradford, Vermont with my 2 parents and my youngest brother. There's 3 families, mine included, that work and operate our farm. We milk 1,600 cows on the dairy, one site, and there's a couple hundred dry cows as well, and about 1,300 young stock replacements. There's 26 full-time employees that help us out on the dairy year round. We milk in a parallel parlor with freestall barns. We farm about 22 to 2,300 acres. About 1,300 of that is corn. And then there's probably 800 to 900, depending on the year, of grass haylage. And then we also grow about 220 acres of wholesale pumpkins. The history of our farm, I'll just give a brief little ditty. My parents bought the farm in 1988, started out as a 100-cow dairy, and in 98 made the decision to invest and build a new facility and milk 400 cows and have really just grown from there. Our cost of production over the last 5 years, which has changed a lot in the last 5 years. So that's very difficult to speak about. Like Clara was saying, as far as cost of labor, our labor costs, our payroll labor costs have gone up 8.5% to 10% every year the last 3 years. Our cost of production is right around $1,650. That's to operate the farm. It sounds very similar to what Clara just said. And then when you factor in payments, debt repayments to the bank, and depreciation, As many of these other producers had spoke about, we do have to keep up with our facilities, or else eventually it just wouldn't be great. So if you factor in depreciation and debt repayments and owner salaries, which there's 4 of us, that would get us up to around the 1820 to 1850 per hundredweight to operate the farm and keep up with our bank payments and depreciation and pay ourselves. As far as other income, it's mainly just the pumpkins. That's a large part of our business, and has really helped grow the dairy, and continued to help us reinvest in our facilities. We joke quite often our barns should not be red, they should be orange, because of how much income that has helped us. At times, and not to be tough on the dairy sector, but sometimes we question why we milk cows and don't just grow pumpkins. So that has been a big deal. As far as forest land, or other forms of income, it's no one works off the dairy. Both my wife stay at home, and both of my parents actively work on the dairy every day. As far as our pay price in the last, over the last 5 years, I went back a few years, not 5, but it's somewhere in that 1820, 1850 range. So we are making money. We have made money the last handful of years. And when I look at that, for last year, which was such a unique year, there was just hundreds of thousands of dollars in CFAP payments. So if we take that out, it's a much different story if we weren't using any government money to run our dairy. Is the pay price for your milk the biggest challenge? I would say that's one of the biggest challenges. I think that the labor side is definitely a challenge. Of the 25, 26 employees that we have, a large majority of them are Hispanic, and it is very difficult. I wouldn't say impossible, but very difficult to find local labor. We're only 20 minutes from Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Medical Center. So many of our neighbors are either working for Dartmouth as professors or doctors, nurses, staff at the college. What other challenges are facing our farm? In the last year, the base program that Agrimark implemented, we are an Agrimark farm, have been for many, many years. So Agrimark implemented that base program. It was April 30th, and it was effective May 1st. And it was basically essentially saying we needed to cut 6% production. The year prior to that, we had built a new dry cow facility to house our dry cows better, and to also milk a couple hundred more cows with only adding 1 employee. So that was going to be a big deal for us. And we had just moved into that in November, and the base program came on. And so we were very much in a scramble, because we were even more than 6% over our initial base. And so we actually, Agrimark did let their members transfer base from other dairies. So we took a pretty aggressive approach and went out and purchased other dairy herds that were deciding that they wanted to exit the business, realizing though that none of those cows could come back to our dairy because we were already over base. So we essentially decided to, I guess we almost called it like prepaying our losses. We spent a lot of money to make it so we could continue to operate the dairy at full efficiency, but it costs a lot of money to do it. So that was a huge cost, and I think that as many other producers said, there are other areas of the country that have base programs now, but there certainly are areas where there are no base programs. And I read an article the other day, we have the highest dairy herd that we've had in over 25 years. So that definitely is not being driven by Vermont at all. The other issues facing the farm recently, I would say, would be inflation, as many others have said. Feed costs have gone crazy since March, as Joanna indicated. I know that she had mentioned some of it had to do with speculation or speculators in the marketplace. There definitely has been an effect of the weather patterns out west and a smaller crop last year coming into this year. So that has drove up our feed prices, or grain prices, which is for probably most people on this call, our number one expense above labor expense. Talking about the dairy margin coverage program, we do participate in that at the 950 level for 5 million pounds, but very similar to what Clara just said. We made 54 million pounds last year. That's 10% of our milk. So as it is very helpful, and it's a great program, the size that we're at now, it's not as helpful as it could be. We have participated in the last year with DRP insurance, which is through a branch of Farm Credit. And so far, we have not received any big indemnity payments. And it's, in the short run, has increased our cost of production probably somewhere to the tune of 30 to 40 cents. I think that we're going to continue to watch and listen to a few different people who are giving us advice on that program, to how much level of coverage we decide to do and spend on the program. I guess I spoke to the base excess program with Agrimark and how that has affected our farm. You know, the base deal, guys, has really made it, whether it's DFA or Agrimark, but much more DFA, has really put a cap on revenue for most farms in our region, which is a huge issue, because as everyone knows, input costs continue to go up, and one of the one great way to mitigate some of those costs is to make a little bit more milk to offset those costs. What would we like to improve on our farm's operation? We bed our cows with sand bedding. We really believe that that's the best bedding material for our cows and for the health of our cows. We need to reinvest in our manure system. I could talk to you guys for the rest of the meeting about our manure system, so I won't bore you with that, but we need to reinvest in manure system. Our bunks are aging, and we continue to try to reinvest in our bunks. Do we hire a custom cropper? We've continued to do more of our own cropping ourselves. We have had a long-term relationship with a local guy, Murdo Limlaw, who has helped cut our corn, grass silage, merge hay, spread manure at times. He's 70, 71 now, and we're not sure of who's going to necessarily follow in his footsteps. My younger brother's very passionate about equipment. And so as we've continued to try to reinvest in our dairy, we've bought key pieces of equipment, and we're starting to do more of our own manure application and help assist with other areas. But we very much have enjoyed the relationship of using a custom operator to help us not have to invest in those large pieces of equipment at this point. And as you folks know, equipment is continuing to become more and more expensive. We do have a drag line system. At the moment, we utilize it on about 300 to 400 acres, depending on crop rotation. We have 2 satellite lagoons that we can pump manure out of with that dragline system. That has been very efficient, and we continue to look at ways where we could put other pits or utilize that system more extensively in the future. Cover crops in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 years, we have basically put a cover crop on after harvesting corn. That's been a custom operator as well who has done that. So we weren't tied up while we were tied up harvesting corn. He was essentially right behind us putting in cover crops. As far as efficiencies or variable speed pump, I mean, we've got many of those different aspects on the farm. The solar array, we do have a 4-acre solar array that's 5 miles south of the farm. The site or the field where we have that array lended itself really well to, I wouldn't say it's completely out of the public eye, but it's behind a set of railroad tracks, kind of hidden to the side. And so we did that array. We do not own the array, but it's a purchase agreement over 10 years with Farm Credit Leasing. Farm Credit Leasing owns the array and took the tax credit, tax incentive, as we did not need that based on how we manage our farm through prepays and such, if we have a good year or not. So it was cash flow positive from day one, which was pretty neat. So the payments that we get, or the reduction of our power bill with Green Mountain Power, more than offsets the lease payment to Farm Credit Leasing. We put in that solar array with Catamount Power. I feel bad. Clara just commented to how efficient her array is working. I can't wait to get off this call so I can figure out how efficient ours is working as well. Other technologies that we've invested in, I guess in the barns, we've got SCR tags that are on our cows that help us know when cows are sick, or when it's time to inseminate. And that has helped us utilize labor better. We also just recently put in a automatic sort gate there again to help utilize labor better, and over time, hopefully have less labor hours tied up with doing the same quality of work that we would hope to have. I guess I would say, moving towards the last one, what type of action plans should the task force put into place? I think more than one person said this. We definitely would very much benefit in the state of Vermont dairy producers from having additional processing in or around Vermont. You folks spoke with, I guess, 9 different producers this morning, and we all ship our milk to either Agrimark or DA. And there's very few plants that are servicing all these dairies, or the dairies that are still in our state, and which leads to less competition. There are other plants that are being built across the country, but it seems like folks are not investing in the Northeast dairymen the way that we would hope that they would, for many different reasons. And I don't know where that leads you folks to help them have more market, or be able to decide that Vermont's a good place to build a $250 million plant. I couldn't speak to that. I guess the other part I would say too is Cabot, Agrimark is very much, everyone I think in Vermont is proud of the Cabot brand. We all love Cabot cheese, and would love for more people to enjoy the cheese across our country. One big thing that Agrimark has continued to say is that there are other markets that they would like to chase, be it in the Midwest, Chicago, the Northwest, and there is never seems like there's enough marketing money to go chase those marketplaces. I'm not sure where that leads you folks to help them or help those folks in their venture to gain more marketplace. But I think that would be something to think about. The other thing that I guess I would mention too, and it's I don't know. It's one of these subjects that I think we all talk about it as farmers, but I think that farmers in general are independent people who don't necessarily feel like we need to or want to have, programs to help us go along. But I will say Vermont is one of the only states in New England that is not having state help on a per hundredweight basis paid out to farmers. Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine have varying programs where the state has come in and basically said, we want to see that land remain open. We want to see dairies in our state. We very much want to see this continue. And Vermont has not taken that stance. And we have the most dairy farms of any state in New England. So I don't know if that's something that should at some point be considered. I'm sure that long-term we need to get that money out of the marketplace, but I'm sure as Vermonters, we'd like to continue to see the land be open and worked by dairy farmers. I guess that's all I have. If anyone's got any questions, go for it.
Bobby has a question.
Yeah, so we'll, for, more processing, more manufacturing. We've seen that kind of go to pot here in the last few years, more consolidation. And if we went out and tried to find a company, got one of these big international companies come, are they gonna, be as cheap as what we already have and not pay any more for the milk, or do we have to try to get into some smaller processing to generate a fair price for our farmers?
I think it's a twofold thing, because I think that the price is one issue, and one gal had spoke to how we need to have a national milk price reform and base program or quota program. I wouldn't disagree with that. But if we're going to bring in or look to bring in, whether it's a medium-sized processor, I know, 10 years ago, Commonwealth went into Brattleboro. That's positive. And I would say the biggest thing is, is we have an excess of milk such that these co-ops now are telling their producers to make less milk. We are being asked, please do not make the milk. We do not want the milk, or we are going to penalize you, to the point that there's no incentive to make the milk. If there was another processor in or around the state of Vermont, that would maybe not necessarily be the case. And folks that wanted to grow a small amount or a large amount to help push down some of these inflationary new costs or costs that continue to rise would be able to happen. Right now we're stagnant. I mean, it's costs are going up and we've got the same revenue. I mean, I know we don't pay our legislatures like that. I mean, inflation is so much and people get a raise every year. Farmers are not getting raises. We're fixed to making the same amount of milk. So I think that's from my standpoint in our farm, that would be very helpful as folks want to continue to grow and try to help push down some of these costs. Did that answer your question, Bob?
Well, to some degree, 20 odd years ago, the big push was to get into value-added products. You've got to stop sending all that milk to Boston to drink and get into this value-added. Well, we have like 60% of our milk that stays right here at home going into value-added products, and yet our income on the farm level seems to be stagnant or dropping. And so, we were fed a good line, and the people of Vermont farmers did well by utilizing their products here in manufacturing here, but it hasn't generated any money. And so I don't really know the complete answer, but to trickle back to the farm.
Yeah, and I don't know how to answer you completely on that. I will tell you this, though, from an Agrimark producer, Cabot is a value-added product. So when I speak about chasing new markets, the number one butter consumed in our country right now is Kerrygold. Kerrygold is made in Ireland. I mean, that is a value-added product. We need to, as Cabot producers or Vermonters, try to become what they have become. They have been inventive enough to chase new markets that people want to eat their butter for varying reasons. I guess that's what I speak to as far as, and I don't know from the state level where that comes in, but definitely, and maybe it's grants. I'm not sure, but we definitely have some really awesome value-added products. We just need to continue to push them out there. And I guess the other part too is as an Agrimark producer, we have 2 facilities in the state. They're not brand new anymore. So it's the big thing is capital. It just takes a lot of money to run these plants or build these plants. And so I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question from me, and then we'll hear from Reg. Where does your milk go down the road?
It goes to West Springfield for butter and powder. Some of the milk goes to Agawam to Hood. Agrimark still does sell about 20% of their milk to other processors.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Oh, John, I'm sorry, John.
Thank you, Dan. Will, just a couple quick questions before your noon stop. One, I think I maybe heard that you bought Rodney Graham's base when he went out of business, and you said you got into that line of things. I just wondered if, since you have perspective on that, if buying and maybe flipping bases is going to be, sort of a hot part of the dairy industry going forward. Like right now, if you doubled, say, pumpkin production, and could you sell 30% of your base to somebody and actually make a profit on that? And the other question was, it would have been interesting to ask all our dairy farmers today, of just as owner dairy farmers, if you've ever figured out with all your hours in a year, what your per hour, if you got paid by the hour, what that would be.
So we did purchase Rodney Graham's base. I can, as far as buying and flipping base, Reg is going to speak next. So Reg, from a DFA perspective, at this point, DFA, unless you purchase the farm and the cows, and I mean the farm as well, you cannot transfer the base. Agrimark has not taken that stance. I think that, we're in uncharted territories. I mean, tomorrow Agrimark could say you no longer can transfer base. What is, and that's why we took that road. So nothing's for sure other than change. I don't know. So I don't know what we would get paid per hour. No idea. Great question.
Less than minimum wage, probably.
Less than that.
Okay, thank you, Will.
Thank you.
So double thanks to you, Reg, for hanging on. We're
Not a
ready.
problem. So did I understand that we have a 12 noon hard stop?
No.
Oh, okay. So that would give me 3 minutes. So, first of all, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We are imposing on your time and we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So yes, to start, thanks for allowing me to testify today. So my name is Red Shapit. I farm up here in North Troy with my brother Michael. We're the two owners of the operation. And we've been doing this 42 years now. We milk 1,500 cows on two dairies. And we got about 2,700 animals, 30 employees. We got 4,500 acres of land. Most of it is contiguous, which allows us to do some pretty innovative things. We've already got a couple of miles of underground transfer line in the ground for our manure. We're going for 6 miles of underground transfer line in the next 5 or 6 years here that allow us to reach all of our land underground with the manure. And then from there, from those points, we inject it right into the ground. We're very diversified. We own our own milk trucks. We've got three milk trucks, 4 trailers. We haul 2 loads of milk a day out of our dairy to Franklin, Mass, Commonwealth, and St. Albans. We also got a sugaring operation. We've got a methane digester. We own around 25 houses, so 10 of those go out to rentals. And all that diversification is allowing us to supplement our dairy, because without them, I really don't think we'd be in business right now. So with that, I want to start off by saying that of those 42 years that we've been in business, the last 30 have been with co-ops, St. Albans, Dairy Lee, and DFA. And so anything I'm about to say is not to take a shot at any of the co-ops, because we are strong co-op supporters. And so I don't want to disparage them in any way. But I really feel that when COVID hit last year and they went to these base excess programs, at first we were excited by the prospect, because I mean, the way to get prices up is to squelch production. And we felt like this was going to happen. What we didn't know was that this was going to be, oh, by the way, I should mention we're DFA members. What we didn't know is that this was going to be a regional thing and not a national thing. And so here we are 16 months later with more production than we had 16 months ago, because there are regions of the country that are allowed to make as much milk as they want. Thereby, so I feel like a lot of the co-ops, excuse me, have really not handled this crisis properly. And I just feel like a lot of the farmers are suffering. I'm going to fast forward to July. So I opened up our milk check and I saw for June milk, we got dinged for $13.33 a hundredweight. To our farm, that meant $72,000 was taken from our operation that we were hoping to pay bills with. I was left with $2,400 after all the payments were taken out of the milk check to pay bills. So obviously I had to go to the bank. I mean, there was no other option. And I got to tell you, it was a gut punch. I really started to look at the options I'm 64 years old, my brother's 60. I started to look at the options that lay in front of us. And 20 years ago, the options would have been to call up our milk producer and just, push back on them and just say, can't keep doing this. And knowing that 20 years ago, they wanted our milk, we'd have had some negotiating power. We could have made the comment that, well, you know what, we're going to look at other co-ops or look at other places to go. And I look at where we are today, and we've got none of that as dairy farmers, no negotiating power at all. If I called them up and said, well, we're not going to ship milk to you, they say, good, thank God, we don't need it. If I was to say, well, we're going to go to another co-op, they go, which one's that? There's Agrimark, there's DFA, that's it. There's no private buyers, there's no one else there. So our negotiating power has gone out the window. And so then, I'll sell the farm. Who are you going to sell the farm to? Who's going to buy a business that has no growth potential at all, that are price takers? I mean, no one's going to get into this. And you're investing millions of dollars now in a lot of these operations. So I guess the feeling I felt in July was trapped, cornered. There's no options on the table for dairy operations anymore. And the only and I don't mean to be dramatic here, but the only exit strategy we have is bankruptcy or death. I mean, I don't know how else we would get out of the business. No one's going to buy it. And so I just feel like a lot of the co-ops could have handled this better. And by better, I mean, make this, if you're going to put a base excess program in, understanding that milk is priced nationally, it is not priced regionally. Understanding that, then the excess plan should have been national. It should not be that, because if our dairy operation was located in Wisconsin, we would have gotten the $72,000, plus we could have made more milk if we wanted. It would have been, so you wouldn't even hear me complain. So it feels like, because we don't have the investment and processing plants up here in New England, we're paying the heavy price for that and for the excess milk that's being made up here. And I guess if I had to draw an analogy, it'd be like this. It'd be like if you told all dairy farmers you're running the Daytona 500. You guys up in the upper Midwest go as fast as you like, 190, 200, doesn't matter. You guys in New England, you're capped at 160. You cannot, your cars cannot go over 160, you stay right there. Who do you think is going to win the race? I mean, there's no way. We're going to be left in the dust, and that's where we're at. And so the things that I'm concerned about are, number one, exit strategies. How do we get out of this? We've got to get back to full production and find a way to do that. And I'd like to see the state work with the co-ops. Now that there's only two, that's rather easy. DFA and, or I should say, commercial co-ops. Work with them to try to get us back to balance so that we can operate the same as the upper Midwest and other parts of the country. And the other concern I have industry-wide is there's no way for young farmers to get in and old farmers to get out. None. I mean, they can't, young farmers can't buy into it. They can't start their own operation like I did 42 years ago when I bought 40 cows and worked my way into it. There's no way for them to get in unless they hook up with an older farmer, this operation. And then a lot of these older farmers are in their 60s and 70s and there's no way to get out. So I just don't, I think those are two things that really need to be addressed long-term. And so with that, I guess I'll stop, but that's, I take any questions.
Bobby has a question.
Yeah, Reg, thanks for hanging in there with us. I was wondering on the base excess and reduction plan, the way I understand it, a lot of farmers sent milk over and beyond their quotas, let's say milk. Who did the accounting on what happened to that excess milk and how much the farmer was going to get paid for it, where it went, and how much it got sold for? Who did the accounting on that extra excess milk?
So before I answer your question, Bobby, I do want to make the comment that last year when they put this excess plan into place, the way we responded is we sold 120 cows right off the bat and we dropped down to 15%. We dropped that 15%. Problem was our expenses dropped down 2%. It was basically purchased grain. The rest of it we absorbed. Okay, so, and we went through that last year. And then in January, we decided we had to go, that didn't work for us last year. I mean, we lost a lot of money. So this year we said, all right, we're going to go to full production and hope that eventually the base excess plan goes away, which it didn't. It only got worse. So that's the status. So it's not like we didn't give the other way of doing business a chance. We did. Now to answer your question, no one knows. We've actually posed that question to some well-respected people in the co-op hierarchy. They have their way of doing it. I'm not going to name names, but I can tell you that there are some well-respected people who are debating how they're coming up with these figures of $13.33 or $9 or whatever it is. And so it's really left. I don't know if that question can be answered. And so, I mean, I could speak to you privately about the individuals who I'm referring to, but yeah, I don't know how they're coming up with those figures.
Well, I mean, if I was buying and selling stuff and I could get a whole bunch of 15% extra product, and then I determined how much I was going to pay out to the people I was getting it from, I would like to have somebody audit that and figure that out, and so the right amount of money went back to the owners of that product, and the right amount of profit went to the ones that received it. I wondered about that so many times. I should have asked that earlier, maybe from some of the other presenters today, but anyways, thank you, Reg.
Not a problem.
John.
Reg, I just wondered, since you are a DFA member, what does the co-op say about what, like, I don't understand why certain regions have no base and the Northeast, with your Daytona analogy, right? Nobody would continue to mount a race team if you were capped that way.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, their reasoning behind it is that the regions, and I believe it's DFA is divided in 7 regions. And the regions that are producing the overproduction should be held liable. It should be a regional issue, not a national issue. And in the upper Midwest, they just made an investment of 300 million in a processing plant up there, and they're trying to supply that plant. So that's why the upper Midwest is allowed to make, there is no base program. Though they did say that they're going to start instituting one here in the next month or two up there, but there is going to be no excess. So there, and farmers up in the upper Midwest know that they were going to. So for the last year or 2 years have been making all the milk they can. And that is, and basically where we're at 15% reduction, they're going to be at 0. They're going to just be capped at staying where they are, just not allowed to make more, but they're not going to be dinged for any less. So to answer your question, it's based on the need, the ability to process that milk in that region. And that's how they determine that. But, you know, the part I struggle with is that this is a, DFA is a national organization. They're using all of our money to build the processing plants in the region. And then that region makes too much milk, which depresses the price nationally, and then they ding us regionally. So it's really tough to see how they do this. I mean, it's difficult. And again, I'm not trying to disparage co-ops. I feel like DFA is doing the best they can, and Agrimark for that matter, doing the best they can with what is in front of them. Okay, they're not doing this to be, mean or towards or trying to put down operations. They're responding the best way they can, but I just feel it's not fair to the dairy farmers in Region 1, which is New England, New York, part of Pennsylvania. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No more questions that I see, Reg. You've certainly ended our meeting with a provocative thinking thoughts. So thank you for that. And if
I
you
guess I just didn't want to repeat what everybody else said, so I just had to throw some more stuff in.
And if you have any final, the old, you're going to hang up the phone and then say, geez, I wish I'd said that. So
I can't think of anything except I really would like to see the state work out something with the co-ops where they're meeting, virtually once a month towards getting back to full production and to find a way to get young farmers in. I'm really worried that the men and women of the dairy industry cannot find a way to get into this operation. And whether it's trying to marry them to older farmers and get them, a type of system where they're just what's the word I'm looking for, but being taught how to take over the business and then a way for farmers to get out. But I think the state's got to really start talking to the co-ops to deal with those two issues. And so if there were, a team of 10 people, a couple of farmers, some academic people, some state people, and then people from the co-ops meeting virtually once a month and then maybe in person quarterly to really bear down on this, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. So with that, thank you. And,
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks.
Yes.
It's just a fundamental question. Are the co-ops now too big?
I don't think that's the issue. And I think that I don't think that would have fixed the problem. I've asked that question myself quite a bit here in the last 18 months. And I don't know if that would have actually take care of any issues, but it's definitely something that should be considered. And I've tried to push DFA to understand that you keep farmers cornered like this, they're going to respond in a way that, I don't, and I'm not trying to, but the only way I can think of is through the courts, because that's where you're pushing them and nobody wants to go there. They don't want to go there. We don't want to go there, but we don't know what else to do when it comes to this, what I see as unfairness when it comes to milk production regionally. And so I don't know. I don't know exactly how to answer that, but that's definitely something to consider. I do wish there were more options for us as dairy farmers out there. And right now, there isn't. Whether that would improve our situation or not, I can't really say.
Yeah, the independent producers are, I think they're all gone now.
They are, yeah. Ehrlich's
Yeah.
gone, Dean's gone, there's no one left. I mean, yeah, there's two options, there's Agmark and DFA, and neither one of them want us, so. So we're an unwanted child here. So, all right, and then I know I'm probably a little outspoken at times, so that's just my style, I'm sorry. Jackie knows that as well as anybody.
Good to see you again, Reg. Always interesting.
We're glad you were last.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons, so thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay,
Rick.
thanks for your time.
So if we have a few minutes to just, yeah, John. Quick, yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Yay.
We're done. Thank you. So can we come, John, can we come back in